Chapter 26. Aegis Headquarters, inside the Trident building. Hello, sir. Sue, you're back. Hello, boss Sue. Hello, sir. Walking all the way in the Trident building, Su-Che also kept smiling and saying hello to the others. Going to the elevator. After the elevator slowly opened, Su-Che walked into the elevator with a small box. Just as the elevator reached the third floor, the elevator door slowly opened, and soon, Crossbones Rumlow walked in with a group of people from the action team. Hello, sir. Have you come back from New York? It seems like it hasn't been more than 5 days since you arrived there. While pressing the 27th floor, Rumlow greeted Su-Che with a smile. Yeah, it's just 5 days. Listening to Rumlow's words, Su-Che also smiled and nodded. Sorry, sir. I heard about the Aegis branch in New York. I didn't expect such a tragic battle. All 3 members of the operation team died in the battle. If I had known at that time, I would have asked Mr. Nick Fury for orders to lead the headquarters action team to support. Looking at Su-Che, Rumlow said sincerely, Thank you, but I didn't expect that this battle would pay such a heavy price. As the elevator slowly ascended, listening to Rumlow's serious words, Su-Che let out a long sigh, and then replied softly, Well, the station is very good, very much like the scene behind Captain America Steve Rogers in the elevator. As the elevator slowly ascended, and soon, when we reached the 10th floor, the door of the elevator opened again. Soon, Sitwell came in with the document. Hello, sir. Looking at Su-Che, Sitwell said hello seriously. Hello, Sitwell. Responding to Sitwell's greeting, Su-Che nodded slightly. Well, don't know why. Every time I see Sitwell, Su-Che comes to mind. The scene where he was taken to the rooftop by Captain America and Sister Widow, and then kicked off by Sister Widow. Sir, I have heard about what happened at the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. I'm sorry I didn't help you. Looking at Su-Che, Sitwell said with the same seriousness. It doesn't matter. The matter is finally over. Although many brothers died, at least the matter is resolved. Listening to Sitwell's words, Su-Che's tone was a little dignified, and he said with some emotion, Obviously, they knew they were coming back today, so they came here in advance to prepare for cliches. If I didn't know the true identities of these people, I'm afraid I really love them, and I really think they care about me. It's fine, and I hope you don't get punished by Mr. Nick Fury. Hearing Su-Che say this, Sitwell said softly, By the way, sir, did you come back in person this time because you were summoned by Mr. Nick Fury? If you need help with anything, just tell me, although I may not be able to help you more. But I really hope I can help you. Turning around to look at Su-Che, under Sitwell's glasses, his expression was extremely serious. Thank you, but you may not be of much help. This time being questioned by Mr. Fury is for sure. Facing the cliché, Su-Che also pretended not to know their identities, saying what they wanted to hear. To be honest, I joined S.H.I.E.L.D. until now. In 12 years, this is the first time I have suffered such a big loss. I don't know how to face Mr. Fury now, but this time, I have to come back in person. No, it's not because of this. Shaking the box in his hand, Su-Che said with a helpless expression. These 10 grams of helium-glazed spar are hard to find, and they must not be lost. Otherwise, once it falls into the hands of people with ulterior motives, then hundreds of thousands, or even millions, will be threatened with their lives. So even if I know that I will probably be questioned by Mr. Fury next, I have to bring it back to headquarters in person. Looking at the box in Su-Che's hand, Sitwell nodded slightly. You are right. It is our S.H.I.E.L.D's responsibility to protect the safety of human beings. So since this thing is so harmful, you must bring it back in person. I think with that, Mr. Nick Fury doesn't blame you too much. Hope so. Hearing Sitwell's words, Su-Che nodded in disappointment. With the elevator to the 33rd floor, Nick Fury's office is here. Su-Che walked out of the elevator. Seeing Su-Che's sultry back, Sitwell pushed his glasses. Should have found nothing about us. Turning his head to look at Rumlow, Sitwell said, I'll report to Mr. Pierce. You can leave with someone. So much the better. Hearing Sitwell's words, Rumlow nodded. Fortunately, he didn't find anything. Otherwise, even if the elevator was full of our people, I wouldn't be able to take it down. You know, although I haven't seen his strength with my own eyes, but from the beginning until now, the 12-year period from the beginning to the present has been enough to prove his ability. And, not to mention those powerful super abilities on him. As if relieved, Rumlow leaned against the elevator wall, looked at Sitwell and smiled. Seriously, if one day, let me face him or Steve Rogers, then I'd rather take someone to fight Steve Rogers than him. The guy who seems to be warm and sunny. In fact, the invisible sense of oppression, that kind of momentum, is really too strong. You are not a member of the combat team, so you can't experience it. Hearing Rumlow say this, S.H.I.E.L.D sneered. You think well, but unfortunately, Steve Rogers died 70 years ago. If you want to fight him, unless you also drive a plane to hit the iceberg. After speaking, S.H.I.E.L.D pressed the elevator button again. Mr. Alexander Pierce is still waiting. Fortunately, things didn't go to the worst of it. Otherwise, I am afraid that the plan that has been planned for decades, before it is implemented, S.H.I.E.L.D will be in chaos. This is not the slightest benefit for my HYDRA. Chapter 27. Trident Headquarters, inside Alexander Pierce's office. Sure. Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D's report, Alexander Pierce asked with coffee. It has been established, sir, that the young man Su-Che has not discovered anything about our HYDRA. Although I can see that Su-Che seems to be peaceful at the moment, there is actually a trace of anger on him. But these anger may come from, on the one hand, Stephen Mond, who joined him, and on the other hand, from the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch. All 3 groups of action teams died in battle. You know, he has never suffered such a big loss during his 12 years of joining Aegis. As Nick Fury's most trusted and capable assistant, he has a pride in his heart that no one else has. In addition to his ability and strength beyond ordinary people, no matter how good his character is, he will definitely be angry after suffering such a big loss this time. Having said that, S.H.I.E.L.D pushed his glasses and then said softly, Sir, as a proud person in his heart, if there is no anger in him, then something definitely happened. But now, the angrier he gets, the more proof he doesn't find out about our HYDRA. This is a good thing for us. After all, the Insight Plan has not been fully implemented yet. If S.H.I.E.L.D is in chaos now, then it's definitely not what we want to see. Only, just what? Hearing that S.H.I.E.L.D did not continue to speak, Alexander Pierce, who took a sip of coffee, said directly, Speak if you have anything. Yes, sir. Nodding his head, S.H.I.E.L.D said, It's just that we have no way to keep this guy Stephen Mond. And the loss of New York Aegis is a little big. The members of the action team that were finally cultivated have all lost this time. Humph. Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D mention this, Alexander Pierce snorted coldly with a dissatisfied expression. That guy, Stephen Mond, deserves to die. If it weren't for his extracurricular branches, how could so many things happen? Damn it, ability is not good, but I have a lot of thoughts. If it wasn't for him, how could our Hydra suffer such a big loss? Putting the cup in his hand heavily on the table, Alexander Pierce pinched his eyebrows with a headache. If it wasn't for being afraid of Su-Che, or if Nick Fury followed this clue to investigate something, I really want to just let this idiot Stephen Mond disappear from the world. Forget it, push him out and let Su-Che and Nick Fury relieve their anger. As for the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch, the people we have spent a lot of thought and cultivated are all a bunch of waste. Even the territory of the attacking Hand Union can be wiped out. I can't imagine the future. Once the Insight Plan starts, will they hold us back? With a long sigh of relief, Alexander Pierce stood up. Turning around to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking at the blue sky outside, he said softly, It's just that more than 30 people can't beat the 10-member team led by Rumlow. Now, even the rabble and the Hand Association can't beat them. I'm really worried that the Hydra members in other places are just like them. You know, what price we paid to make the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch into a place under my Hydra control. What's more, in other areas, we haven't invested so much manpower and material resources. Speaking to himself, Alexander Pierce clenched his fists hard. So, we can't put all our hopes on people. This is the reason why Dr. Zola must develop the Insight Plan back then. He must have seen the failure of Mr. Red Skull John Schmidt. That's why Dr. Zola is so obsessed with technology. Having said that, Alexander Pierce turned around and looked at S.H.I.E.L.D. But no matter what, we can't be so careless. Let Crossbones Rumlow figure out a way to elevate our Hydra members in other regions. This time the crisis has been avoided. I don't want the next time when I launch the Insight Plan, there will be such a big crisis. Also, it's time for Winter Soldier to revive again. Hearing Alexander Pierce's order, S.H.I.E.L.D nodded immediately. Looking at S.H.I.E.L.D who left, Alexander Pierce looked out the window again. Damn it, I knew from the beginning that Nick Fury should have been distracted to other places so that the young man Su-Che could be nurtured into the future of our HYDRA. Unfortunately, it's too late. Back then, Nick Fury brought 10-year-old Su-Che into the S.H.I.E.L.D Eagle's nest. At that time, he didn't set his sights on Su-Che. Thinking of this, Alexander Pierce felt a little regretful in his heart. If in those days, while he was training in the Eagle's Nest, he would pay more attention to him. Maybe now, everything will be different. How could he, such a person with ability, become the child of someone else? Hydra. It has been almost 70 years. If Dr. Zola can see this scene today, I'm afraid we'll be a little disappointed. Since when did Hydra have all eyes on the Insight Project? And completely forget, cultivate the next generation belonging to S.H.I.E.L.D? Maybe. The source of the together, it all starts from Nick Fury, the guy who controls S.H.I.E.L.D. At this moment, Alexander Pierce also regrets it. Maybe back then, I shouldn't have pushed Nick Fury to the position of S.H.I.E.L.D. boss. Chapter 28. It's just this thing. It's making a lot of trouble in the city? Looking at the 10 grams of helium-glazed spar in the box, Nick Fury said, "You know, because of that battle 2 days ago, many people from the army, the parliament, and so on stationed in New York have found me. After all, the battle that night used too much firepower, even rocket launchers and grenades. Although I suppressed this matter, it also caused a great impact." Having said that, Nick Fury looked at S.H.I.E.L.D. and said, "Definitely, even if it has an impact, our Aegis won't care. Who do we need to explain to? They are not yet qualified for us to give an account. Only this time, the loss of our Aegis is indeed a bit big. 3 action teams, a total of 36 people died in battle. Sue, tell me, those people in the hand are really so strong? Even our S.H.I.E.L.D. have to accept such a big loss?" Seeing Nick Fury staring at himself without blinking, S.H.I.E.L.D. shrugged and said, "They definitely aren't that strong. Under the unexpected circumstances, how could our 3 action teams of S.H.I.E.L.D. be unable to solve the others 300 people? Even if they have stronger firepower, from a frontal perspective, we will win in the end." Having said that, S.H.I.E.L.D. pushed the box in front of him towards Nick Fury. "Actually, I made them fight like this on purpose in that fight. Although such a battle command is very low level, how can a low-level command make them lose half of their manpower? And that battle was not the place of death of all the New York Aegis branch combat teams, the battlefield that really wiped out the 3 teams. It's because I let people from the same Eagle's Nest attack them on their way back." Having said that, S.H.I.E.L.D. took out another box and put it on the table. "It can be said that most of the 3 action teams, I gave the order to let Carl and the others remove them all." Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s words, Nick Fury was stunned, and even Maria Hill, who was in charge of recording, raised her head suddenly. No matter how angry S.H.I.E.L.D. was towards Stephen Mond, he commanded his colleagues to kill them on purpose and even sent people to attack them on the way back. The fact that all S.H.I.E.L.D. colleagues died was enough for S.H.I.E.L.D. to be imprisoned by S.H.I.E.L.D., or even sentenced to death after internal deliberation by S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, Aegis has the right to punish members of Aegis with death. So when I heard S.H.I.E.L.D. admit that these people were deliberately sent to death, even those people who were sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. attacked and died on the way back. Maria Hill closed the record in her hand in an instant, and her face became a little ugly. She knows how much Nick Fury values S.H.I.E.L.D. But even so, it is not the reason why S.H.I.E.L.D. made such a big decision privately. Getting up, Maria Hill walked over to Nick Fury's desk and pressed a button without hesitation. The next moment, all the networks in the entire office are cut off, and all signals are blocked at the same time. Then the record just now will be completely deleted. "Thanks." Looking at Maria Hill's actions, S.H.I.E.L.D. smiled at Hill and thanked him. Clearly, Hill meant to let himself explain only to her and Nick Fury. Second, if the explanation fails, then after Hill deletes all records, no one will know what the truth of the matter is. That's right, as long as no one knows the truth of the matter, neither the rules of S.H.I.E.L.D. nor the World Security Council can convict and punish S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the only help Hill can do for S.H.I.E.L.D. so far. For Hill's action, Nick Fury did not stop, not even any unexpected expressions. Because even if Hill didn't do it, so would Nick Fury. In any case, you can't let your most valued seedlings be damaged in this matter, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. made such a big mistake because of a momentary anger. As for whether S.H.I.E.L.D. broke the rules of S.H.I.E.L.D., oh, even if it is offended, what can it be? If only you and Hill knew, and no one else knew, then everything, Nick Fury, didn't happen. That's right, that's how he protects the calf. What? You have to endure it if you don't accept it. Who makes yourself the biggest boss of S.H.I.E.L.D.? 12 years, Sue. Looking at the box that S.H.I.E.L.D. pushed over on the table, Nick Fury didn't open it. Instead, he looked at S.H.I.E.L.D. with a serious expression and a very soft tone. "I still remember that day 12 years ago, when you were just 10 years old. After losing your family, you stood alone on the street. At that time, under the emotional outburst of losing family members, huge amounts of energy erupted in your body. At that moment, it is destined to make everyone feel fear. On that day, I personally brought you into S.H.I.E.L.D. In a blink of an eye, time flies so fast, 12 years have disappeared in a blink of an eye, and you have gone from a dazed and unfamiliar child to the most important person in my Nick Fury's heart. Having said that, Nick Fury got up, poured a cup of coffee for S.H.I.E.L.D. himself and sighed. In these 12 years, my eyes have always been on you. I'm very fortunate that a decision that year did not disappoint me, and you have also become an existence that overwhelms everyone in the same eagle's nest. It can be said, Sue, you are my child who I watched grow up. So I understand your character, personality, conduct, and everything. Although you are proud in your heart, you are never arrogant and have a warm personality, but you are not overly kind. You are humble and easygoing, but you place great importance on rules. Even if you have the strongest ability among all your peers, you are always willing to help people who are weaker than you. Never look down on anyone with your extraordinary ability. This is why, in the entire Divine Shield, whether it is your predecessors, your peers, or your juniors, they are all convinced and praised by you. Turning back to his seat, Nick Fury stared at S.H.I.E.L.D., who always had a smile on his face, but his eyes were very calm. Then he said softly, I don't believe you are the kind of person who gets carried away by anger and does such irritating things. If it's someone else, then they should be detained and interrogated in the interrogation room at this moment, not sitting here. But this person is you. Then I believe all of this is for a reason. So, give me a reason, my child. No matter how absurd it is, even if you tell me these people are executed by your order. They were all wiped out 70 years ago, the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. I would also like to believe. Looking at S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury said very seriously. Chapter 29. To be honest, no one dislikes this feeling of being absolutely trusted. Whether S.H.I.E.L.D. blocked all signals in the entire office without hesitation, destroyed the original records, or Nick Fury's saying that if you give me a reason, even the most absurd reason, he's willing to believe it. This makes S.H.I.E.L.D. a little moved. Obviously, they all don't want S.H.I.E.L.D. to lose on this matter. And even the reason given by S.H.I.E.L.D. was that he was dazed by his own anger. Then they will also find another reason for themselves, which is not just writing, I protect my people on their faces. Just like the call with Zhang Uncle before he came from the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. In fact, when Zhang Xian Uncle heard the news of Hydra that was investigated by himself and Aegis, he was also silent for a long time. In the end, in his words, although the shield and the spear were on guard against each other, they also cooperated with each other. The purpose is to protect the safety of this world. Whether it is the spear or the shield, I don't want the other party to be damaged and disappear. No matter which side disappears, it is the biggest loss to the safety of this world. According to his old man's words, although he was the undercover agent who placed the spear on the shield, and from the perspective of the spear, I hope that the shield can never surpass the spear. But from the perspective of maintaining world security, the spear also hopes that the shield can always exist. Only by competing with each other and complementing each other can the spear and the shield become stronger. Therefore, as the boss of the spear, Zhang Xian hopes that S.H.I.E.L.D. can help S.H.I.E.L.D. and eliminate Hydra from the perspective of the overall situation. Whether it's for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s future, being able to take over the Aegis from Nick Fury, or for the safety of this world. No one wants Hydra to reappear. After all, that's a bunch of lunatics. A group of madmen who are full of ambition and will cause all kinds of disasters to this world. Raising his head, he looked at Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., and now he was earnestly waiting for his reason. Even if their reason is not enough, then they will help themselves find a reason for the expression. S.H.I.E.L.D. suddenly laughed and gently pushed the box on the table towards Nick Fury. In this box, that's why I did this. Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D. say this, Nick Fury opened the box without hesitation. Soon, more than 30 teeth appeared in front of Nick Fury. Looking at these teeth, Nick Fury was also taken aback. In his expectation, there may be all kinds of evidence. Maybe these evidences can't represent anything, or maybe these evidences will shock the world. But, more than 30 teeth? What does it mean? Picking up a tooth, Nick Fury looked at it carefully, then raised his head to look at S.H.I.E.L.D. and said, the artificial tooth, according to the shape of the tooth, should be the position of the posterior molar. With that said, Nick Fury picked up the cup on the table and gently smashed a tooth. The next moment, a light blue liquid oozes out from the originally seemingly solid artificial teeth. Looking at the pale blue liquid, Nick Fury froze for a moment, then blurted out, "Cyanide?" "That's right." Seeing Nick Fury's slightly surprised expression, Su-Che smiled and said, "After I asked Carl to kill the 3 groups of operatives halfway, I carefully examined their bodies. Obviously, these people's teeth have artificial synthesis toxins based on cyanide. The method of hiding poison in the mouth is not the style of our Aegis." Having said that, Su-Che handed Nick Fury the deciphered files from the mobile phones collected by these members before the mission. Obviously, the identities of these people are definitely not simple, and I didn't know the specific identities of these people at first. Until these deciphered files, many undecipherable garbled characters start and end with HA. I have a bold guess. When I heard Su-Che say this, I looked at the artificially synthesized teeth on the table and the countless garbled characters on the documents handed over. Nick Fury also guessed a possibility. After a moment of silence, Nick Fury said softly with a dignified expression, Hydra. S.H.I.E.L.D. After saying this, Nick Fury looked at Hill. "How many years ago was the last time we found out about S.H.I.E.L.D? 6 years ago." Hearing Nick Fury's question, Maria Hill replied without hesitation. "In fact, Hydra was wiped out 70 years ago. What we found 6 years ago was just an accident. After all, the Hydra of only a few people is just a document cobweb horse trace found in history by a group of crazy guys. Then they thought they were available and called themselves S.H.I.E.L.D. But in reality, these guys are not even the average street gang." Hearing Maria Hill's words, Nick Fury turned his head to look at Su-Che. Seriously, he hopes Su-Che can give himself an explanation. But just like what he just said, even if Su-Che said that these people were Hydra that was wiped out 70 years ago, he was willing to believe it. But Su-Che really said that after these people were S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury felt a little heavy. He couldn't imagine what the scene would be like after Hydra was really resurrected. In particular, in the New York Aegis branch of Nova University, all of them are actually Hydra people. This makes Nick Fury a little unbelievable. Since when did S.H.I.E.L.D. get infiltrated by S.H.I.E.L.D? Even easily took over a big New York Aegis? And he didn't even notice it. But whether it's the garbled letters of these files, some of the messages sent, or Hydra's iconic fangs, all of this proves the authenticity of what Su-Che said. Turning his head and looking out the window, he was shrouded in a cloud of clouds at the moment, and it seemed that it would rain at any time. Nick Fury said with a heavy tone, "Sue, I believe what you said and the evidence you submitted. But it is precisely because of this that I feel a little shocking. If even the New York Aegis branch, such an important location, was infiltrated by S.H.I.E.L.D, what about the Aegis branch elsewhere? Like City of Angels, Seattle S.H.I.E.L.D branch, Miami S.H.I.E.L.D branch, etc. I can't imagine this happening." With that said, Nick Fury turned his head, and in the only remaining eye, a sharp eagle-like gaze flashed. "I wish all book friends a happy Lantern Festival. Relatives are here at home. The bear children are so annoying." Chapter 30. Hey, don't be so pessimistic. Looking at Nick Fury, who frowned, Su-Che showed his usual sunny smile. He got up, poured a cup of coffee for Nick Fury, and then smiled. "I don't think other places will be controlled by the people of Hydra like the New York Aegis branch." "Oh, tell me about your judgment." Hearing Su-Che's words, Nick Fury didn't speak, and Maria Hill asked directly, "Sue, we trust your judgment ability very much. After all, where is your ability? So tell me your judgment." Hearing Hill's words, Nick Fury nodded too. In fact, just because of the 2 evidences just now, Nick Fury can't believe that Hydra is revived. If it were someone else, then Nick Fury would have thought it was just a shirk. Even if there is an inside story, Nick Fury is only willing to believe 50%. But this person is Su-Che, the child he watched grow up with his own eyes and brought out with his hands. So Nick Fury is willing to believe Su-Che's judgment from the bottom of his heart. It's very simple. If Hydra is really that powerful, then S.H.I.E.L.D. has long since become the Snake Shield. Looking at Nick Fury and Hill, Su-Che said softly, "I know that there must be Hydra members in other places besides the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. Even our Aegis headquarters has traces of S.H.I.E.L.D. But don't forget, Nick is now the ultimate boss of S.H.I.E.L.D., and everyone knows Nick's ability. If Hydra's power is really that huge, then Nick found out long ago." Having said that, Su-Che looked at Hill. More importantly, the importance of the New York Aegis branch is unmatched by other regions. So if I were S.H.I.E.L.D, I would definitely focus on running Aegis New York and nowhere else. Otherwise, if other places are like the New York Aegis branch, how can S.H.I.E.L.D be hidden in the dark like now? Having said that, Su-Che has set his sights on Nick Fury again. But Nick, one thing we have to admit is that the S.H.I.E.L.D headquarters should also have traces of HYDRA. Even at the S.H.I.E.L.D headquarters, those who lead Hydra should not be in a low position. Even so, the group of Hydra people still did not have any action. I think there is only one possible surname. That is, they are brewing a bigger plan, a crazier plan. Hearing Su-Che's judgment, Nick Fury thought for a moment, then nodded. Although I trust your judgment, it still makes me feel extremely bad. Turning his head to look at Hill, Nick Fury said seriously, Hill, don't tell the people of the World Security Council about this for the time being. Once these people know about this, I'm afraid it will make things even worse. Clear. Hearing Nick Fury's order, Maria Hill nodded. All our conversations today will not be recorded and will not be known by the fourth person. Thanks. Hearing what Hill said, Nick Fury nodded in satisfaction. Then I closed my eyes and thought about the whole thing. It seems that the helium glaze spar caused by Stephen Mond has more targets on my side than you. With a sneer, Nick Fury looked at Su-Che and said, After all, everyone knows how much I value you. And you are still the child I brought out with my own hands. Once the helium glaze spar causes irreversible major consequences, neither you nor I can escape being implicated at that time. Sue, bring someone to arrest Stephen Mond right now. No matter what method is used, I want to hear with my own mouth that he admits his identity as HYDRA. Speaking of this, Nick Fury hesitation. I always feel that behind Stephen Mond, there are people with higher status. I can guess, but I don't want to guess in this regard. After all along, that plan is that he will continue to operate. Hearing Nick Fury, whose voice was cold, Su-Che immediately stood up and nodded, Understood. I know what to do. With that said, Su-Che glanced at his watch, and then said, When I arrived at the headquarters of the Trident building, I had already issued an order to arrest Stephen Mond. Okay, although there are some situations where he will be executed first, but if there is no accident, he should be locked in the interrogation room now. Then go for it. Hill and I will watch the whole thing. Hearing Su-Che's words, Nick Fury said with an angry laugh, Yes, sir. Nodding to Nick Fury, Su-Che left Nick Fury's office directly. Watching Su-Che leave, Nick Fury let out a long sigh of relief, then leaned back in his chair, wondering what he was thinking. After a while, he turned to Hill and said helplessly, See? This brat ordered the arrest of the 7th level agent at the Aegis headquarters, but he didn't even report it to me. It's getting more and more unruly. It sounds like Nick Fury is blaming on the surface, but in fact it seems to be showing off. Maria Hill rolled her eyes directly. Isn't it your pet? However, other people really can't be compared with Sue. Just rushing to these thunder means it is not comparable to other Aegis agents. I understand now why you turned your attention from Phil Coulson to Sue. If I were Phil Coulson, I'm afraid I wouldn't have the courage to do it. After all, if one doesn't do it well, it will cause irreversible consequences. In terms of ability, Phil Coulson really can't match Sue. Hearing Hill's comment, Nick Fury squeezed his brows and said, But this just proves that Sue is wholehearted in thinking about Aegis. He even left his own future behind. After all, for such a big thing, other than him, who would dare to do this? Apart from him, who would dare to use thunder immediately after finding the slightest sign of something wrong? Oh, this proves that my eyesight is still good, even if I only have one intact eye left. Listening to Nick Fury's boast, Hill did not refute, but nodded in approval. Who would risk their future, or even their life, if they were not thinking of S.H.I.E.L.D wholeheartedly? Use cruel means to eradicate traitors? Not to mention, arresting the S.H.I.E.L.D high-level agent without an order? Even if it is myself, I dare not do this lightly. Chapter 31. In the interrogation room, looking at Su-Che sitting in front of him, Stephen Mond said with a free and easy expression, As a loser, I have nothing to say. It's just a pity that I couldn't put you together. Otherwise, sitting in the interrogation room now, the person being interrogated should be you, not me. It's a pity that everything didn't work out, you won. After saying this, Stephen Mond lowered his head and stopped talking, and he stopped looking at Su-Che. So, your purpose is to become the controller of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch because I succeeded you? Is that not enough? Stephen Mond suddenly raised his head and yelled at Su-Che with a frenzied face. I am the controller of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch, and I have worked hard for nearly 25 years for this position. Why? Why can you, a young man in his 20s, easily deprive me of the fruits of my 25 years of hard work. I don't agree. It's all just the jerk of Nick Fury. I'm going to frame you. I'm going to frame Nick Fury, and if I make it, then you and that damn Nick Fury will be out of luck. Speaking of which, Stephen Mond, who was still crazy at first, leaned back on the chair a little decadently. Unfortunately, it didn't work. It's really not reconciled. I see. Hearing Stephen Mond's words, Su-Che turned his head and looked at the video of the flashing red light on the corner of the wall. Stephen Mond has confessed his crime. As Su-Che's voice fell, the monitor in the corner behind him slowly went out. Looking at this scene, Stephen Mond suddenly sneered. Turn off the monitor? What? Want to get revenge on me? Come on, fight. I can't live anyway. If you want to fight, fight while I'm still alive. If you wait any longer, I'm afraid. Before Stephen Mond could finish speaking, Su-Che suddenly raised his fist and knocked Stephen Mond to the ground with one punch. Damn B***************************** D. Do you know how much your organization has suffered because of your greed? Stephen Mond, who was knocked to the ground by a punch, originally wanted to say something with a sneer. But looking at Su-Che with an angry face, Stephen was a little stunned for a moment. Before his thoughts could react, Su-Che took a step forward and grabbed his collar directly, and then said with a vicious expression, members of more than 30 action teams. You know how hard it is to develop these members? Especially when that guy Nick Fury is running S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you know how much effort we've spent trying to cultivate our own organization staff and not let that be ********* Nick Fury find out? Inside Nick Fury's office, watching Su-Che grab Stephen Mond's collar and say he's an *******, Nick Fury suddenly black line. He turned his head and looked at Maria Hill, who was still cold but couldn't help but smile. Nick Fury said helplessly, I just said, this brat is a B********************************. D. That's the B******************. D. You raised yourself. Facing Nick Fury's words, Maria Hill retorted with a smile. However, this sentence made Nick Fury unable to refute. Ask indoors. Looking at the closed camera, listening to Su-Che's extremely angry words at the moment, an extremely ridiculous idea gradually appeared in Stephen Mond's mind. Just his collar. Looking at Stephen Mond's eyes widened at this ridiculous idea he made up. Su-Che didn't give him a chance to react at all, and continued to question with an angry face. Damn, the original New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch was painstakingly managed by us for so many years. I finally sent me over to take over the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, and the organization is going to give you other compensation. But because of you B************, D, everything fell short. Can't you discuss it with the boss in advance when you have this idea? For so many years, did we at Hydra try so hard to cultivate and teach you this rubbish? Listening to Su-Che's questioning one after another, Stephen Mond, who had no room to react, looked at Su-Che in confusion. After hearing that sentence, is that how Hydra has tried so hard to cultivate and teach you? Stephen Mond subconsciously looked at the angry Su-Che and replied, but the Secretary General didn't tell me that you are R9. After being questioned by Su-Che's series of questions, Stephen Mond, who was confused, realized that something was wrong in a split second. Damn, you're kidding me. For a moment, Stephen Mond's head was covered in cold sweat, because he is sure that Su-Che doesn't know the true identity of his HYDRA. So he is ready to sacrifice himself in order to keep this secret. But because Su-Che first turned off the camera and video, and then a series of questions, plus a word about HYDRA, he didn't have time to react. Looking at all the signs, it seems that Su-Che's identity is also HYDRA, and after saying this sentence in a trance, at this moment, Stephen Mond was able to react. All this is because this guy is using his own words. All of this is the conspiracy of this damn guy in front of him. It's over. It's all over. He actually admitted his identity just now, and even said the words of the Secretary General. If the entire Hydra is implicated because of his own inattentiveness, then even if he dies 100 times, it will not help. If the camera is not on, then I absolutely cannot let Su-Che live. Thinking of this, Stephen Mond rushed towards Su-Che with a ferocious face, as if he wanted to die with Su-Che. Bang! Before Stephen Mond could pounce with a ferocious face, Su-Che kicked him out several meters away. Looking at Stephen Mond, who fell to the ground and vomited blood in pain, Su-Che tidied up his clothes and resumed his usual warm smile. Don't you know that even if I don't use those abilities in the entire Aegis, my skills are the best? Also, thank you for your cooperation. Looking at Su-Che's warm smile, Stephen Mond, who was in great pain at the moment, felt a great cold. He tried his best to open his mouth to say something, but the power of the kick just now was so powerful that he couldn't even speak in pain. Just as Su-Che was about to turn and leave with a smile, Nick Fury's text message came over. Turn on the phone and watch the message from Nick Fury. Su-Che raised his eyebrows slightly, and the next moment, he took out the weapon directly from his waist, and a bullet directly ended Stephen Mond's life. Put away the weapon, though I don't know why Nick Fury gave such an order. But for Nick Fury's order, Su-Che has no doubts. Chapter 32. Time to turn back a few minutes. Looking at the video, Su-Che first turned off the video recording, and then spoke very fast as Hydra to question Stephen Mond. It does not give it any space and opportunity to react. Nick Fury folded his arms and said nothing, but Hill on the side said, I thought that some cruel means would be used to make him recognize Hydra's identity. I didn't expect to use this method. I have to say that this method is more suitable in comparison. It's very Natasha Romanoff's way of talking. Hearing what Hill said, Nick Fury nodded slightly. No matter what method we use, as long as we can get the information we want, then it's the best way. As for some Natasha Romanoff styles, it's normal. After all, Natasha Romanoff and Barton have been partners for so many years, naturally familiar with each other's styles, habits, and methods. He nodded lightly and looked at Stephen Mond, who was a little confused by Su-Che's continuous questioning in the video. Hill smiled. It seems that without any room for thinking and reaction, Stephen can't resist, and soon, we will know. Before Hill could finish speaking, he heard Stephen Mond's words from the Secretary General in the video. Hearing the 3 words of the Secretary General, whether it is Nick Fury or Hill, his expression became solemn in an instant. Who else but Alexander Pierce could the whole S.H.I.E.L.D be called so? Although I heard Su-Che say that Stephen Mond is a Hydra person, there are even more Hydra hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D, even when his identity is not low. One person who came to mind in Nick Fury's mind was Alexander Pierce. But after hearing Stephen Mond mention Pierce in person, Nick Fury's heart skipped a beat. Destroy this video immediately. Looking at the video, Nick Fury's first thought was to destroy it immediately, and he must not let this video accept himself and Hill Su-Che. The 4th person knows, after all, once the video leaks out, I am afraid that S.H.I.E.L.D will cause great turmoil in an instant. More importantly, if what Stephen Mond said is true, then he can't let Alexander Pierce know. He already knew his true identity. While talking, Nick Fury took out his mobile phone and directly gave Su-Che an order to silence Stephen Mond. Hearing Nick Fury's order, Maria Hill also knew the seriousness of the matter and immediately came to the computer. Get ready to delete this video. But before it was completely deleted, it was blocked by Nick Fury. Holding his arms and watching the video, Su-Che neatly eliminated Stephen Mond. Nick Fury is a little silent. After a while, he asked Hill, do you think what Stephen Mond said is true? There should be no falsehood. After all, under Sue's identity as Hydra, under a series of strong questions, Stephen has no room to react. That's why I blurted out this sentence. What's more, Nick, when you ask me this, then you should have an answer in your heart. Faced with Nick Fury's question, Hill looked solemn, but said seriously, more importantly, I'm different from you. Nick, I'd rather trust Sue than Alexander Pierce. Hearing Hill's statement, Nick Fury, who has always been moody, clenched his fists in a rare moment. Magifac, damn, haunted HYDRA. During the years of my career, I have always doubted everything and never trusted anyone easily. That's why I'm called the King of Agents. But only Alexander Pierce, my old friend for many years, I have absolute trust in him. I'm even willing to use my life to stop that damn bullet for him. With that said, Nick Fury watched the video. Su-Che opened the door of the interrogation room and then greeted 2 people in. Dispose of Stephen Mond's body. After thinking for a while, Nick Fury still deleted the video. Since there is a problem with the identity of this guy Alexander Pierce, according to his authority, this video cannot be kept as evidence. Then what are you going to do? Listening to Nick Fury, there's something wrong with Alexander Pierce's identity. Not that Alexander Pierce is HYDRA. Maria Hill knew that Nick Fury still had the last shreds of hope for Pierce, even if this has violated his principles. Before everything is investigated, it is impossible to determine how many Hydra people are in the Aegis. We can't do anything right now until those damn Hydra folks are out in the sun. hammering the table in front of him hard. Nick Fury's eyes flashed with a stern look. Now, the best way is to investigate these things secretly. Absolutely, absolutely can't let the fourth person know except you and me, Sue. I can't see it with my own eyes. The shield built by Mr. Howard and Ms. Peggy was destroyed in my hands. With that said, Nick Fury turned his head and looked at Su-Che, who opened the office door and walked in. Then he said, Sue, keep everything. I heard Nick Fury say this to himself inexplicably. Su-Che was not surprised, but nodded directly. Don't worry, I know what to do. Su-Che knew exactly what Nick Fury meant. When the enemy is dark and we are clear, the best solution is to remain unchanged and respond to changes. Then I'll go back to the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch first. I will slowly turn the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch into my fan. Even if there is a big change, we can still have the power to fight back. Hearing Su-Che's words, Nick Fury nodded seriously. Go. Nodding to Nick Fury and Maria Hill, Su-Che turned and left. As soon as he reached the door, he heard Nick Fury suddenly stop himself behind him. Turning his head in confusion, he heard Nick Fury whisper, Thank you. This hard work seems to be just an attitude similar to praise. In fact, Su-Che could hear how many meanings there was in Nick Fury's hard work. Showing a warm smile like a sunshine to Nick Fury, Su-Che's voice is clear and crisp, but he has a strong voice. Everything for S.H.I.E.L.D. Everything for S.H.I.E.L.D. Watching Su-Che turn and leave, Nick Fury was silent for a moment, then got up and came to the floor-to-ceiling window. Looking at the sunny scenery outside at the moment, Nick Fury's heart is full of haze. After a long time, he breathed a sigh of relief and said slowly, Everything for S.H.I.E.L.D. Sorry, this chapter is updated late. I went to fight in the morning. Everything has finally been laid. And finally, it is our Su-Che little big brother's turn to show off. Chapter 33. New York, S.H.I.E.L.D. Branch. Finally home. Leaning on the chair, Su-Che breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at Susan, who was helping him peel the apple, and smiled. I thought I would stay at headquarters for a few more days. After all, this time things are a little troublesome. I didn't expect to come back so soon. Not punished. Cut the peeled apple into pieces and serve it to Su-Che. Watching Su-Che pick up the apple and eat it, Susan wiped her hands and then stood behind Su-Che, pressing Su-Che's shoulders and asking softly, What do you say? Hearing Susan's question, Su-Che picked up the apple and put it in his mouth. How could I be punished? Yes, Mr. Nick Fury will punish everyone, but he is reluctant to punish you. Even if you make a mistake, at most you will be reprimanded. How could you lower your level, Boss Sue, etc.? Listening to Susan's words, Su-Che turned his head with a smile. Why? I feel a little sour when I hear it. Be envious. I'm dying of envy. After curling her lips, Susan suddenly laughed. Boss Sue, go and ask those guys from our same class, or those who are younger than us, who doesn't envy you being so valued by Mr. Fury? But it's just envy. It's beyond jealous. After all, Boss Sue, where is your ability? From the beginning of the Eagle's Nest, we couldn't lift our heads for 4 years. So we are convinced. Turning her eyes, Susan smiled and said, And we brothers and sisters, who do not know that you are Mr. Fury's successor, Mr. Sue, when you take over the Aegis in the future, can you still treat us brothers and sisters badly? Go a little further. After making Susan click to the right, Su-Che nodded slightly and said, After all, we all grew up together and trained together. They are all people who know each other well, so naturally they won't be worried like those who joined S.H.I.E.L.D. outside. By the way, how did the civilian staff of the original New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch investigate? Are there any suspicious people? Hearing that Boss Sue mention the business, Susan immediately came to the desk and took out a stack of documents and handed it to Su-Che. This is the file of the civilian staff of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. Seriously, Boss Sue, when you asked Carl to attack the action team, we knew that the people in the action team might betray S.H.I.E.L.D. But compared to the people on the operations team, those civilians may seem to be of good value, but not as big as them. So we are still investigating one by one based on all the movement trajectories, filings, personnel contacts, etc. of these people since they joined the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch until now. With that said, Susan took a chair and sat down opposite Su-Che carelessly. But there are too many people, and some people have been in the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch for more than 10 years. So the workload of this task is too large. I'm afraid it has to be carried out slowly. Watch the meter. Looking at Susan, who was sitting across from him with Erlang's legs crossed, Su-Che helplessly shook his head. I'm wearing a skirt, so I can't pay attention. Che, We all grew up together. When we were training, who didn't see anything? Boss Sue, you even broke into our washroom by mistake. Cough, cough. Listening to Susan looking for the account, Su-Che interrupted the guy in front of him. Isn't that a misunderstanding? Besides, you were young at that time, but now it's different. While speaking, Su-Che looked at the information of these civilians. After thinking for a moment, Su-Che looked up at Susan. Seeing Su-Che's torch-like eyes, Susan, who was originally eating an apple, stood up in an instant. As Susan, who has grown up together since childhood, she naturally knows that Su-Che's expression is about to give an order. Since starting an investigation from scratch is too much work, keep it simple. Just from the time these people carried out the orders of the previous head of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, Stephen Mond, the investigation began. Start the investigation one by one. If there is no problem, you can stay in the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, even if there is even a trace of suspicious cobweb. Either transfer to Trident headquarters or transfer to other places. Those who are more suspicious can choose to file directly depending on the situation. Yes, sir. Hearing Su-Che's order, Susan immediately stood up straight and nodded with a serious expression. Susan, tell us that this time we transferred from the headquarters, these same batch of brothers from the Eagle's Nest. Maybe this mission is more difficult, but there is no way. This is the first time I have taken charge of the Aegis branch of a region, and it is the most important region. So, I have to make the New York Aegis branch into an iron barrel, an Aegis that only belongs to me, Su-Che. Whether it's any other force, whether it's the military, parliament, or other departments, any meticulous work, Anzi, I will exclude them. Hearing Su-Che's words, Susan nodded solemnly. Don't worry, sir, this subordinate knows what to do. After answering Su-Che's words, Susan returned to her loose state. Boss Sue, we brothers and sisters all know who you are. Knowing that you can't hold half a grain of sand in your eyes, so from the time you left the New York Aegis branch and headed to Trident headquarters, we brothers and sisters started the action plan. Whether those civilians were suspected or not. But after all, we are the ones who train together and grow up together. Can you trust us? Picking up the last piece of apple and putting it in her mouth, Susan continued eating while eating. Except for those researchers, there is no way for us to replace them. As for the other action teams or civilian staff, we brothers and sisters are slowly starting to replace them and replace their tasks. Even Carl and I sent some brothers who are good at intelligence to replace the original New York Aegis branch. Definitely, Anzi's process may be slow, but at most half a month, no matter whether there are any suspected civilian staff, we will replace their jobs. At that time, the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch will be your boss Sue. Whether they are suspicious or not, it doesn't matter to us anymore. Saying that, Susan stretched her waist, ignoring Su-Che in front of her, but said with a big smile, all of us brothers and sisters know how important the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch is to you. Boss Sue this time. Don't worry, just like before, no matter what you do, Boss Sue, we will fully support you. Even if you violate the Aegis rules, we will do anything. Having said that, Susan pursed her lips and then said softly, but the most important thing at the moment is the 2 bodyguards you sent to Tony Stark. Boss Sue, you have to deal with this first. Tony Stark, it's a monster again. I got up late in the morning, and I went for an injection on an empty stomach. I am so hungry now, Brother Ming. Wait for me to cook instant noodles in a bag, and come back to continue updating. Chapter 34. Tony Stark cheating again? I don't know why, after hearing this news, Su-Che not only didn't get angry at all, but felt that this is normal. After all, Tony Stark of at the moment, although he has developed an iron armor, is not yet Iron Man. Don't wear armor. You deserve to be called Iron Man. Before awakening superhero consciousness, Tony Stark was just that cynical megalomaniac. So, this kind of person starts to be a demon again. Isn't it normal? So, when I saw the 2 subordinates apologize to myself and look like they didn't control Tony Stark, Su-Che didn't blame them. In fact, it was a bit embarrassing for the 2 of them to watch Tony Stark in a steel battle suit. After letting the 2 subordinates go back to the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch first, Su-Che came to Tony Stark. By the way, where do you live? Before Su-Che could speak, Tony Stark took out a bottle of wine, poured Su-Che's wine, and asked with a smile, if S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't give you a place to live, then there are actually many more houses in my name. Oh, definitely, it's definitely not free, but I think a little rent is definitely not a problem for you. The house is empty anyway. What do you think? He picked up the wine glass and handed it to Su-Che, then moved the place himself to give Su-Che a place to sit. Tony Stark looked at Su-Che with a big smile and said, "It's not necessary. After all, Aegis is not short of money. So although the place for me is not as luxurious as yours, it is still a good villa." Sitting on the rug, like Tony Stark, with a glass in one hand and leaning on the sofa. The fact is already obvious. This is the guy Tony Stark, who really considers himself a friend. So on the one hand, I want to help my friends, and on the other hand, I am worried that my friends will lose face and so on. That's why he said that he arranged the house, and then he had to collect rent and other things. Men, they are all animals that want face. Tell me what happened this time. Taking a sip from the wine glass, Su-Che looked at Tony Stark and asked, "Don't tell me, you're wearing a battle armor to see the righteousness." "That's not it." Hearing Su-Che's words, Tony shrugged his shoulders and touched the glass lightly with Su-Che. After taking another gulp of wine, he happily burped. "I just want to make up for my mistake. Actually, it's not my fault, not even my own." Leaning on the sofa and facing Su-Che, Tony Stark didn't hide anything. "You know what? When I used my relationship that day to get Obadiah Stan arrested, I've asked Pepper to watch Stark Industries for me, just when I thought it was over, but I saw news on TV." Mentioning that news, Tony Stark cursed in a low voice and then smiled bitterly. "I just learned that Obadiah Stan has used his private channels to sell a lot of Stark Industries weapons over the years. Those weapons have killed many people and made countless people lose their homes. Especially watching the video, those children are so pitiful that they were even taken away by the forces that kidnapped me, and then used the weapons I made to threaten their parents. Damn, I can't be indifferent no matter what." So Conscience found out? Listening to Tony Stark's words, Su-Che picked up the wine bottle and refilled the empty Tony Stark wine glass. "Well, instead of pouring half a cup, it's full. If you want to tell the truth, then you might as well drink more." In fact, Tony at the moment, there is not even a person who can confide in his inner anguish and say something sincere. Otherwise, it would not have been just now, seeing the joy that he showed when he came to his villa. "It's not that your conscience found out. Are you trying to get me drunk? Kong busy. Just tell me what you want. Don't sell my kidney after getting me drunk." Looking at the full glass of wine, Tony Stark laughed. "I think it must be impossible to buy a good price." In the face of Tony Stark's joke, Su-Che also added, "After all, it has been used countless times, and I am afraid it has already lost its worth. This will cost me money." "Screw you." Listening to Su-Che's ridicule, Tony Stark said angrily, and then gulped down half a cup. He breathed a sigh of relief, leaned on the sofa and raised his head. Tony Stark said helplessly, "Perhaps you're right, man. Maybe it's my conscience that I found out. That's when I found out, facing a group of guys who became refugees because of the weapons I made. My anger actually surpassed the anger that Obadiah Stan betrayed me and planned to kidnap me in an instant. Maybe it's pity, maybe it's conscience discovery. I don't know how to describe it. I just think that this matter has something to do with me. It has a very, very big relationship. Even though this incident was not caused by my own hands. But it's just uncomfortable here." Pointing to his heart, Tony Stark rubbed his cheeks hard. "It always feels like this. Can you understand?" "Understand, but don't understand." Looking at Tony Stark, whose eyes were a little red for a moment, Su-Che shook his head slightly. "What I do in front of you is the one who has been in control of the New York Aegis branch since childhood. For 12 years, I have not missed a thing. I didn't catch a single person, and I didn't kill a guy who missed a person. So I can understand the condemnation of your conscience, but I don't understand it. Maybe, man, I don't even know how many lives I have in my hands, but at least I know that I've never done anything wrong. Definitely, buddy. The lives on my hands are definitely not more because of the weapons you developed by yourself." Listening to Su-Che's words, Tony Stark silently rolled his eyes and pointed at Su-Che with a middle finger at the same time. "Thank you for your comfort, come on." "You're welcome." Who made some people wear steel armor to fly to the desert in broad daylight, and after they came back from solving the problem, they actually flew around New York and were photographed by everyone with their mobile phones. Raising a glass to Tony Stark, Su-Che said with a smile. Chapter 35. "Damn, I knew it was wrong to ask you this guy to say these things. You also said that I was arrogant and poisonous. Obviously you are even more poisonous." He drank all the wine in the glass in one gulp and filled the bottle by himself. Tony Stark looked at Su-Che and complained. Although they said so, but after a few spit on each other, the originally heavy heart seemed to relax a lot. "Don't be fooled. I've had 2 drinks. and you haven't even finished half a glass. It's not fair. See where Su-Che is still enjoying himself with half a glass of wine and tasting it carefully. Tony Stark picked up the bottle and was about to fill Su-Che. I don't need to use wine to numb my thoughts, and this wine is quite good. It is worth tasting slowly, rather than chewing peony like you. I don't care, it's unfair anyway. Regardless of what Su-Che said, Tony Stark insisted on filling Su-Che with the bottle. I have better wine than this in my wine cellar. If you want to taste it, I will send you a few bottles later. Don't be fooled now. Filling the Su-Che glass with wine, Tony Stark laughed in satisfaction. Immediately clinked glasses with Su-Che, ignoring the drink spilled on the carpet. Goodoo. After drinking half of the glass of wine, Tony Stark spit out a sigh of alcohol, then looked at Su-Che and asked, "You said just now that I flew around New York wearing a steel armor and was filmed. Did it cause you trouble?" Looking at Su-Che, Tony Stark asked with a serious expression. "I know that people of your identities hope that the world can function normally, and there must be no abnormalities. After all, if ordinary people know about these abnormalities, what kind of trouble might it bring you?" Watching Tony blink at himself, as if a little drunk, Su-Che thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "This is no trouble. If it was a trouble, then I would have given the order right away. Delete all pictures of you controlling your Warframe flight on the internet. You don't think I can't do something so easy? That's good, that's good." Hearing that he didn't cause trouble to Su-Che, Tony Stark nodded reassuringly. After raising the glass and drank the remaining half of the glass, Tony Stark, who filled himself up, suddenly seemed to have thought of something. Immediately, he looked at Su-Che with a curious expression. "By the way, have you seen the abnormal I mentioned just now? It's like the ability that is different from ordinary people. Like those mysterious abilities of yours. The last time you caught me in the lab, according to JRVISS calculations, you can at least withstand the impact of 1,500 newtons with one hand. Are there people similar to you? Or are there really aliens in this world? If there are aliens, can you K off?" Listening to Tony Stark, with a little drunkenness, inquired about these confidential things to himself. Su-Che immediately raised a middle finger to him speechlessly. "Just now you looked like your conscience was being condemned, and now you're inquiring about these things? I now seriously suspect that this guy just wants to take this opportunity to inquire about something to satisfy your curiosity." Hey. Watching Su-Che point at his middle finger to himself, Tony Stark smiled with a glass of wine. "That is to say, do aliens really exist in this world? I knew that the Earth is definitely not the only planet in the universe with life forms. Unfortunately, we can't study these alien creatures, otherwise." Okay. Forget about that. Let's keep drinking." Looking at Su-Che, who squinted at himself, Tony Stark made a gesture of surrender. Instead of clinking his glass and drinking it down, Tony Stark breathed a sigh of relief. Then, the voice was a little complicated. "Next, what should I do? Give me a piece of advice, Sue. Give me a piece of advice as a friend. As soon as I close my eyes now, it's because of Stark Industrial Weapons, because of the weapons I made with my own hands, and the loss of the home, and the family is destroyed. The picture of the river of blood." He grabbed his hair hard, but in the end he spread out his hands weakly. "Although these are not caused by my own hands, they have a great relationship with me. Although I personally destroyed the weapons that circulated through my company and even shut down Stark Industrial Arms manufacturing. But, for the sins that have been done, damn it." Looking at Tony Stark, who opened his heart to himself and didn't know how to get rid of the condemnation from his conscience, Su-Che thought for a while, then shook his head too. "The matter is easy to resolve, but the condemnation from the heart, the debt, Su-Che has no way. The most important thing is that there is really no way for Su-Che to persuade these things. This guy seems like an arrogant, cynical D. In fact, it's like a child again. If it sounds good, there is a hint of warmth and kindness in the heart, but if it sounds bad, it is still a little bit of the virgin. It's like being questioned by a black mother who lost her son in Captain America 3. Tony Stark was once again condemned by his own conscience, guilty. However, if he is not like this, then he will not become the guy who saves the world in the future. Perhaps, this is what becomes the so-called superhero condition? Fortunately, I am not a superhero, nor will I become a superhero who would force Lai in front of him because he had saved countless people but failed to save his family. then I am afraid that the only result is that this person is slapped to the ground by himself. Revealing his true character. 2 hours later. Sorry, Sue. Trouble you again. Back from Stark Industries, looking at Tony Stark lying on the sofa, snoring and obviously drinking too much. Peepo shook his head helplessly, then smiled at Su-Che and said, he has been having a bad time during this time. Whether it was the incident in the desert, the betrayal of Obadiah Stan, or the irreversible consequences of those weapons. It's just that he keeps these things buried in his heart. It's not that he doesn't talk about it, but that he doesn't have a friend to talk to. Touching Tony Stark's cheek with some distress, Peepo turned his head to look at Su-Che and said, perhaps getting drunk for a while will make him feel better. Chapter 36. 3 days later, in the Su-Che office of the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch in New York. After Tony Stark got drunk, Su-Che didn't know if he felt any better. But now, Su-Che has some headaches. Looking at the TV, Tony Stark announced at the press conference that he was Iron Man seriously. Su-Che didn't have any surprises. The only surprise is that Tony Stark, after getting drunk, didn't know what to think, and actually started the little Spider-Man style. For 3 days, Mr. Tony Stark, wearing a battle armor, helped 7 old people cross the road, saved 3 runaway cars at the same time, prevented 2 robberies, and caught 12 thieves. Even a lost dog was found, and, listening to Susan's report, Su-Che waved his hand and pinched his eyebrows at the same time. By the way, are these things Iron Man should be doing? This is so obviously what a future little Spider-Man should be doing, right? What? This is going the way of little Spider-Man, leaving little Spider-Man nowhere to go? A good neighbor for New Yorkers, Iron Man Tony Stark? Depend on. This is very out of character for him. After closing the document in her hand, Susan spread her hands and said, although I don't know why he chose to do these things, it is obviously very inconsistent with Tony Stark's character. Boss Sue, what did you say to Tony Stark that day? How could I know? Hearing Susan's curious question, Su-Che also helplessly leaned back on the chair. I remember that day he was drunk and said some guilt and conscience. Then I told him that instead of being locked up at home while studying the armor and suffering the so-called condemnation of conscience, it's better to go out and use your ability to make up for it. Even if some things are irreversible, when saving a person, it is very likely to save a world and protect the kindness that was lost due to fault. With that said, Su-Che looked at Susan and said, isn't this one of the ideological content courses we received when we were in the Eagle's Nest? Seriously, who of us take these words seriously? Just listen to it. But who would have thought that Tony actually took it seriously? Speaking of which, Su-Che was also amused by Tony's actions these days. It's pretty normal too, isn't it? Seeing her boss laughing, Susan also said with a smile, according to your analysis, boss, Tony Stark obviously flew to the desert in his battle armor himself. While destroying weapons, I saw those who suffered and hurt because of the weapons that Stark Industries secretly leaked. Although it has nothing to do with him directly, these indirect results still make him feel a little unacceptable. So at this moment, his heart is like falling into the water. Your words are like a life-saving straw. After finally catching it, naturally he will not give up easily. Having said that, watching TV, Tony Stark, who was wearing a suit and being interviewed by those reporters with his hands open, seemed very proud. Susan nodded earnestly and said, but then again, boss, this is the first time I feel that Tony Stark is actually pretty good. Apart from that character that people can't like, at least he's kind-hearted. People like this are rare, although sometimes they are too kind and they look like a virgin. But maybe, the more you lack, the more you care about it. Anyway, I think I like to see a cynical B************* D gradually transform into a kind-hearted person. Hearing Susan say this, Su-Che also nodded. Forget it. He can do what he wants. Anyway, as long as it's not life-threatening. It is also a good thing to have a good neighbor Iron Man within the jurisdiction of our Aegis branch. As for a hero, it's not that easy to be a hero. Seeing Su-Che said so, Susan seemed to remember something, and then suddenly burst out laughing. Looking at Susan, who was smiling brilliantly at the moment, Su-Che asked with a curious smile, what's wrong? It's okay. I just heard you say that, boss, and remembered what Mr. Nick Fury asked us when we were in the Eagle's Nest. I still remember the time when Mr. Alexander Pierce said that we are all heroes who secretly protect this world, and when necessary, we need to give our lives. You replied directly, whoever loves to be a hero will be a hero. I remember that after you said this, Mr. Pierce's face darkened, and Mr. Nick Fury is laughing from the side. Hearing Susan's words, Su-Che laughed involuntarily. That sentence at the time was entirely because Nick Fury, who was beside him, pouted involuntarily after the guy Alexander Pierce finished speaking. And I also feel very disgusted by this kind of brainwashing. What the hell are you sacrificing yourself for this world? Why would you sacrifice your life for S.H.I.E.L.D? So after getting a wink from Nick Fury, he directly refuted Alexander Pierce. After all, at that time, the people who were in the same period as him were not very old, and it was the most enthusiastic time of middle school. Nick Fury is also worried that because of Alex's words, these students in the same class will be fooled into fools. Okay, stop laughing. It's time to get down to business, Susan. I asked you to investigate. Before Su-Che could finish speaking, the door of the office opened instantly the next moment. Looking at Carl, who hurried in, Su-Che frowned. Be calm, Carl. You are now the head of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch action team. Can't be as reckless as before. Hearing Su-Che's rebuke, Carl heaved a sigh of relief and tried his best to stabilize his breath. Then he said, Boss, there is an accident in the New York park. A big man with a height of nearly 2 meters and a green body is running away and destroying things at the same time. Behind that big green man, a group of people headed by General Ross are arresting him. Even fighter jets and tanks. What's more important is that the direction this big man is fleeing is coming towards us. Finally finish the injection. There have been very few updates in these 4 days, but starting tomorrow, you can break out without injections. Chapter 37. You mean, General Ross drove the Hulk towards us? Hearing Carl's report, Su-Che frowned slightly. The Hulk? This title is more vivid. After all, that guy is really big. It's like a monster. But boss, it wasn't General Ross who drove the Hulk to rush towards our Aegis, but the Hulk rushing towards us. The army led by General Ross. Before Carl could finish speaking, Susan on the side interrupted directly. It was Ross who led his subordinates and drove the Hulk to rush towards our Aegis branch. Hearing Susan's words, Carl was stunned, looked at Susan, and then looked at Su-Che. As if thinking of something, he nodded suddenly, and then looked at Su-Che with an expression of righteous indignation. Boss, that guy Ross is so unhuman. They didn't know where to get a monster like the Hulk. They didn't like it. Instead, they drove the Hulk toward us. Damn, Ross. They are trying to pull our Aegis into the water. Looking at Carl, who had reacted, Su-Che shrugged and smiled. Look, don't we have a reason to take action? What is the principle of our Aegis? Any supernatural ability who can bring danger to ordinary people will be taken care of by our Aegis. What's more, after this guy Ross created this monster, he actually drove this monster to rush towards us. It's obvious that he wants to attack our Aegis, and along the way, the Hulk may have destroyed many public properties and injured how many people. How could our Aegis not care about this kind of thing? Having said that, Su-Che stood up from his chair and gave an order to Carl. Take everyone in the action team and deploy all weapons such as Kuan-style fighter jets. In any case, we must ensure the safety of ordinary citizens. This is the responsibility of our S.H.I.E.L.D. Listening to his boss's righteous words, Carl suddenly said solemnly, Yes, sir. With that said, Carl ran out to give orders. Watching Carl leave, Susan smiled at Su-Che and said, So, boss, Carl is more suitable for leading the action team, not for intelligence management. You know, his strength is good, but sometimes his mind can't turn around. You don't want to be my secretary. If you want to take over the intelligence of the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, just say it directly, don't be around me. Listening to Susan's words, Su-Che said speechlessly, Since when did all of your subordinates learn to beat around the bush when talking to you? It always feels like their exchange with me is like a conversation between myself and Nick Fury. I have already investigated Selena, and there is nothing suspicious about her. So boss, even if you can't trust people like our brothers and sisters, but at least as an assistant secretary, she is quite competent. Also, you know, I'm better at leading the brothers and sisters outside to collect and process intelligence, so let Selena do the job of secretary. Seeing that boss Sue heard his voiceover, Susan said with a smile, Okay, since there is no problem with Selena's identity, let her come over to take over your duties. After this matter is dealt with, the people from the intelligence team of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch will be handed over to you. Yes, sir. Standing up straight, Susan nodded solemnly. More than 10 minutes later, outside the New York Aegis branch, about 5 kilometers away from the branch building. Boss, everything has been cleared. Looking at Su-Che leaning beside the car with a relaxed expression, Carl, who had evacuated all the people around, came over and reported to Su-Che. Understood. Nodding lightly, He spread his mental power for a moment, and the next moment, it was obvious that S.H.I.E.L.D could feel that Hulk, who was in a frenzy at the moment, roared loudly and ran towards him angrily. Behind it, dozens of fighter jets and dozens of tanks, cars are constantly pursuing, but some fully armed Ross men did not attack. Obviously, because this is a downtown area, even Ross did not dare to issue an order to open fire. If it hurts those passers-by who are screaming and hiding in the corner, or keep running away, then things will be completely serious. Although now, getting Hulk out has made things too big. But as long as you trace Hulk into the wilderness and capture him, then you can always press things down. Roar. Feeling that the annoying group of guys behind him were chasing closer and closer, Hulk was even more angry at this moment. After jumping to a height of more than 10 meters, he roared angrily, then landed on the ground, grabbed a manhole cover, and smashed it towards the group of Ross behind him. Bang! The manhole cover smashed on top of the tank, and suddenly a huge amount of sound was heard. But in addition to delaying the action of the tank, smashing the direction of the tank out of alignment, but it did not have a very good effect. Just as Hulk angrily moved forward and continued to escape, the next moment he suddenly raised his head. I don't know when, in the sky ahead, more than a dozen Kuan-style fighter jets stood in the sky, and the sights were all placed on Hulk. And on the ground ahead, dozens of heavily armed people are pointing their weapons at themselves. Among these people, a young man holding his hands looked at himself with an indifferent smile. Seeing this scene, Hulk immediately stopped running and roared angrily at the group of people. Behind Hulk, General Ross frowned instantly after seeing these people. Damn, you actually recruited these people. As one of the leaders stationed in New York, how could Ross not know the existence of Aegis? So when S.H.I.E.L.D led S.H.I.E.L.D's people blocking the way, he threw the cigar in his hand on the ground. He raised his hand to stop the team from moving forward, and then signaled his men to stay where they were. In an instant, the originally chaotic scene became quiet in an instant. The people from S.H.I.E.L.D led by S.H.I.E.L.D blocked the way, and the guys led by Ross were arresting him. But unfortunately, the self in the middle was not attacked even in the slightest. This made Hulk stand still, and for a while, he didn't know whether to break through the building on the left or the right and continue to escape, or to smash all the people blocking the way in front of him. The group of guys behind them are extremely hateful, but the group of people in front of them didn't seem to have any malicious intent to attack themselves. So what should I do? There is nowhere to escape. Scratching his head, Hulk, who is not very intelligent at this moment, has a look of confusion in his eyes full of anger. Chapter 38. Looking at the middle of the field, Hulk standing there at a loss. In S.H.I.E.L.D's mind, the consequences of helping General Ross or helping Hulk all flashed once again. And then, hey, I am worried about the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch. The action team and the civilian staff can be replaced, but those scientific researchers are not easy to replace. Isn't this a ready-made person? As for this ready-made guy who turns green when he's emotionally unstable, oh, our New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch is the most harmonious, loving, helping, and caring team. How could it make Dr. Bruce Banner feel dangerous and angry? Just by looking at his sunny and handsome smile, what kind of boss is there? What kind of subordinate is there? Well, all of my subordinates are obedient, sunny, and all-loving teams. Do not believe? If you don't believe me, you can inquire. Ask the members of the Hand Society, and ask those who were the original Hydra branch in New York. We are very kind. Definitely, this is just one reason. Hey, big guy. Looking a little helpless, looking at himself for a while, and looking at Hulk on Ross's side with fists clenched angrily, S.H.I.E.L.D walked forward with a warm, sunny smile and whispered, "Don't worry, poor big guy. We're here to save you. Hey, relax. No one of us here is going to hurt you. We're here to protect you and help you. So calm down and relax." While talking, S.H.I.E.L.D released his spiritual power to the maximum and used his spiritual power to release his kindness. This is what S.H.I.E.L.D is best at. Otherwise, how did you become one of S.H.I.E.L.D's most famous good duo in these 12 years? With a smile, people will think you are a good person, especially at S.H.I.E.L.D, a place full of insight. Just having a sunny smile will only make others think you are hypocritical. There is absolutely no way to get the title of good guy. After all, who doesn't know whose means? With the release of his mental power to the maximum, he originally watched S.H.I.E.L.D walk towards him, but clenched his fists nervously, as if he was demonstrating Hulk. The next moment, he tilted his head in confusion, and a trace of ignorance flashed in his eyes. But although he clenched his fist, he did not move. That's right, big man. You see, I don't even have any weapons. Reaching out to Hulk, Su-Che said in a very soft voice. Turning his head to look at Su-Che's right hand, Hulk blinked his eyes, and there was an unintelligible voice in his mouth. After a while, Hulk also imitated Su-Che's appearance, slowly opening his fisted hand and reaching towards Su-Che. The moment he touched Su-Che's hand, Hulk pulled it back abruptly and looked at Su-Che vigilantly. But after seeing Su-Che without any attack, avoidance, or even fear of his own emotions, Hulk gradually became more courageous, and once again slowly stretched out his fingers and lightly touched Su-Che's palm. Hey. After confirming that Su-Che really didn't want to hit himself, Hulk suddenly opened his mouth and smiled at Su-Che. That smile, how to describe it? It's like the stupid son of the landlord's family. For the actions of Su-Che and Hulk, Ross, who was more than 10 meters away, could see clearly at this moment, especially after seeing that the person who was determined to be arrested and researched by himself was actually coaxed by the people of Aegis. Ross's face was almost wrinkled into a bun at this moment, but unfortunately, he didn't dare to make a move. Not for fear that Hulk will smash that damn S.H.I.E.L.D. member if he does something. Instead, Mother, when did the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. become so smart? When Su-Che and Hulk were in contact, the goddamn group of guys actually aimed all their weapons on their side. Its meaning is already clear. If he dares to act rashly, dare to disturb one person and one monster in the middle of the field. If Su-Che is attacked by monsters, they will attack him without hesitation. Seriously, Ross definitely doesn't care if the people at S.H.I.E.L.D. live or die. Dare to face the guy who lied to his daughter to fall in love with him, and then turned into Hulk because of Gamma. Even if you die, it's no big deal. But I just wanted to give an order, and the person who bet on the Aegis would not attack himself, or the forces behind him, just because there is one person in the middle of the field. Almost instantly, the sniper's infrared rays aimed directly at his head. Obviously, this is no longer a warning. As long as you dare to do something, then your head will definitely be opened by bullets in the next second. Damn! He was constantly cursing in anger, but Ross didn't dare to make a sound at the moment, and even stood there, daring to make any movement, in case one of his actions makes the guy aiming at his head mistakenly think that he is going to give an order. Isn't it too wrong to die? So I can only watch, one person and one Hulk in the middle of the field, splitting their mouths and laughing. Mother, why do you feel so creepy? In the middle of the field. Come with me, big guy. Looking at the grinning Hulk, Su-Che took Hulk's hand, pointed to his side, and said softly, "Come to our side. No one will hurt you. I can assure you that we will keep you safe, and no one will dare to use fighter jets, tanks to capture you, or bullets to hit you." Listening to Su-Che's soft voice, I felt the spiritual power with great kindness. Hulk tilted his head, but he didn't resist. Let Su-Che hold his middle finger and slowly walked over there. Well, it's the middle finger. With Hulk's current IQ, it's hard to tell what the middle finger means. Although a little wary looking at the group of fully armed guys behind Su-Che, as well as those Kuan-style fighters in the sky. But Hulk could clearly feel that these weapons were not aimed at him, but at the bad guys who kept chasing after him. Scratching his head, he was held by Su-Che, he giggled, and came to the middle of the action team, and was pressed by Su-Che and sat on the ground. Just stay here. I'll take care of the rest. Reach out and rub it lightly on Hulk's big head. Looking at Hulk, who was foolishly happy at himself, once again transformed into the silly son of the landlord's family. Su-Che laughed too. It has to be said that the mental strength is strong to a certain extent. In the case of low IQ, Hulk is so easy to be coaxed by himself. Why do you feel like talking about yourself like a scumbag? Ahem, the next step is to perform the second stunt of a scumbag. Humph, this kind of thing has to be beaten down. Who is unreasonable, and who is reasonable, isn't it? Chapter 39. Originally, I planned to drive Hulk into the valley outside the city, and then arrested him for research. But who would have thought that just halfway through the plan, the group of people from Aegis suddenly appeared and disrupted all their plans? Now, not only is he threatening himself with a sniper aimed at his head, even Hulk has them kidnapped. Looking at Su-Che, who was walking towards him after he kidnapped Hulk, Ross was just about to ask questions, but the next moment, he suddenly heard Su-Che's backlash. "Ross, what do you mean by this today? Is it intentional to destroy our New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch?" Looking at Su-Che, who was standing 5 meters away from him, he was actually kicking back at this moment. Ross almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. "No, what do you mean I want to destroy your shield? What does this matter of Tain Yong have to do with your S.H.I.E.L.D from beginning to end? It was you who suddenly appeared, and it was you who kidnapped Hulk. Now, your mother-in-law is actually kicking it up? Looking at the young and disgusting S.H.I.E.L.D in front of him, Ross suppressed the anger in his heart just as he was about to speak. He heard S.H.I.E.L.D continue to ask angrily, "Everyone knows that not far away is the building of our New York Aegis branch, but you actually drove this big guy towards our building. Ross, are you going to tell me? Isn't this your intention? Don't say you don't know where our Aegis building in New York is. I think you are behind all these things, and the purpose is to pull our S.H.I.E.L.D into the water." Listening to S.H.I.E.L.D's questioning, Ross ignored the cigar in his hand and just wanted to point at S.H.I.E.L.D and say something angrily. But S.H.I.E.L.D didn't give him time to answer. Instead, he nodded with a face of sudden realization. "Oh, I understand. This big man must be ordered by you, Ross. Let your military researchers transform a good person into this. Only you guys can do such an inhuman thing." I said, "Why do you have to drive this big man towards our Aegis building?" It turns out that it must be because you know that your plan of experimenting with people has been exposed, so you are afraid of being held accountable. That's why I want to pull our S.H.I.E.L.D into the water. After all, with our Aegis, even if you are punished, you will become slightly less. Damn it, Ross, you are so vicious. Listening to S.H.I.E.L.D's constant accusations, General Ross's face turned red. Pointing at S.H.I.E.L.D constantly, it seems like he wants to curse out all the anger in his heart. Needless to say, Ross, I know your vicious thoughts and plans. Our Aegis will not let you succeed. You fart. After finally taking a breath, Ross looked at S.H.I.E.L.D angrily and said, "What is my vicious plan? Damn, unreasonable be asterisk 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 D. Who wants to have something to do with you bastards of Aegis? Then why are you driving this big guy to our Aegis building? Don't tell me that Ross doesn't know. This is our Aegis building." Seeing the furious Ross, who was already walking according to his own ideas at the moment, S.H.I.E.L.D snickered in his heart, but on the surface he continued to say indignantly, I want to say something to refute, but then I think about it. This is annoying, and it is true. It seems that the front is the New York Aegis branch building. If these nasty guys didn't show up, then maybe Hulk wouldn't turn around and would really crash the Aegis building. Thinking of this, Ross, who was still angry at first, suddenly felt that he really did something wrong, right? No. Shaking his head, Ross took a deep breath, then looked at S.H.I.E.L.D and said, "Anyway, this matter is our army. General Ross, the duty of S.H.I.E.L.D is to capture and monitor all those with supernatural abilities who are a threat to ordinary people. I don't care if this big guy is made by you, but his existence has clearly threatened the world of ordinary people. So obviously, this matter is already within the purview of our S.H.I.E.L.D. With that said, S.H.I.E.L.D took a step forward, and then with full momentum, looked at Ross and said righteously, "Since it is our S.H.I.E.L.D's responsibility, then we naturally do our part. You can choose to file a complaint or report it, but in front of us, this big man, our Aegis will definitely take it away. You, damn it, you are simply unreasonable." Seeing that the person with S.H.I.E.L.D crossed his foot, now he wants to take away the Hulk that he has been thinking about for a long time. Ross was a little anxious in an instant, but I can't say it again, if I fight. Not to mention whether I can fight it. I fought with the people of S.H.I.E.L.D in the New York City area. Then I am afraid that in less than half an hour, I will be held accountable and put in prison. Especially looking at this stunned young man in front of him, he motioned all weapons to aim at him and the soldiers behind him. It seems that he really wants to fight with himself with the person with Aegis. Ross was also a little worried. No. Are the young people of Aegis now so stunned? They don't care that this is a downtown area? Don't they know what kind of impact it will have if they fight here? Damn it. When did the young people of S.H.I.E.L.D be so reckless? Taking a deep breath, Ross suppressed the anger in his heart, looked at S.H.I.E.L.D and said, "I can't explain it to you. Let your person in charge, Stephen Mond, come over." "What's the matter, me and him?" "Stephen Mond has been slaughtered by my own hands. I am S.H.I.E.L.D, and now I am the controller of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch. So, just tell me something." Hearing Ross's words, S.H.I.E.L.D said directly. In the face of S.H.I.E.L.D's answer, Ross froze for a moment. Well, no wonder this young man is so reckless. It turns out that the really special girl is a stunned green. Actually killed Stephen Mond, the former head of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch? Thinking of this, Ross felt helpless for a while. Especially seeing that the heavily armed guys behind S.H.I.E.L.D are all behind a group of young people. Now, Ross completely believed that the young man in front of him really dared to fight here with the people he brought. I'll deal with Nick Fury personally on this matter. Damn it. Although very unwilling, but looking at Su-Che, if you don't retreat, then we will fight. And the group of S.H.I.E.L.D. members who are ready for battle. Ross, my heart is bitter. These days, why are the people of Aegis so reckless? Damn, what the hell did Nick Fury teach these guys? They don't want to die, they want to die. Chapter 40. As the saying goes, those who are stunned are afraid of being stunned, and those who are stunned are afraid of dying. Just now in front of General Ross, this desperate stunned young man performed perfectly. Come out and mix. It should be said that after taking over the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, sooner or later, he will have to deal with these military and negotiators. The last time I dealt with the Hand, there was a big commotion. Plus this time, hard steel General Ross. I am afraid that in the eyes of those people, I am a desperate guy. Is it necessary to make them feel this way? Necessary. If Aegis is a pure organization, then naturally it doesn't need these. But it is clear that there are a lot of Hydra parasites in Aegis now, and both myself and Nick Fury are investigating these Hydra people. So naturally I don't have time to wrestle with them too much. In addition, let them have such an impression of themselves, so the next time their people go out on a mission, it will be more convenient. That's the way it is. If you are really tough, the other party will be more afraid to slap your nose on your face. But then again, speaking of Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D, I wonder if this is the norm. You see, Hydra leader Alexander Pierce pushed Nick Fury to the position of S.H.I.E.L.D. And now, Nick Fury uses his spear Undercover as a S.H.I.E.L.D. future for training. His good guy. Wait until the Aegis is really in control. Are you looking for another undercover agent to train yourself? Shaking his head with a smile, Su-Che took a sip of his coffee. Let's switch to black tea in the future. Looking at Selena standing in front of him again, Su-Che said with a smile. Good sir. Facing Su-Che's words, Selena nodded slightly. Don't be cautious, Selena. Looking at this moment, Selena's expression is a little nervous and a little restrained. Su-Che said with a gentle smile. You know, the last time I was tricked by Stephen Mond, it almost killed hundreds of thousands, or even millions. In addition, I haven't been here for a long time since I first came to the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. Naturally, it is necessary to distinguish who is trustworthy and who is with ulterior motives. Speaking of which, I have to thank you, Selena. After all, you reminded me about the helium glaze spar. So during this time, you were frightened. Listening to Su-Che's gentle voice, Selena pursed her lips and then felt a little aggrieved, but also a little relieved. His eyes turned red in an instant. It is also true that Selena is not very old. According to the information, she is only 18 years old. If it weren't for the fact that his mother was a civilian at S.H.I.E.L.D. and then gave her life for Aegis, then Selena is not eligible to enter the Aegis. But even so, Selena has not experienced the training of the Eagle's Nest. It can be said that she is an ordinary 18-year-old girl. So work is suspended these days, while listening to familiar colleagues either disappear, dismissed, or hear news of death. It must be very scary. In addition to the age of cranky thinking and hearing about various workplace struggles, it is natural to be a little scared. Well, they all complain about House of Cards, all kinds of plans to murder people at every turn. The harmed Selena also thought that she would be cleaned. Selena, after investigation, you don't have any problems. So I am missing a secretary and assistant here. I don't know. Are you willing to come and help me? Warm voice, elegant and easygoing smile. Coupled with that handsome and sunny smile, Serena, who was originally aggrieved and a little worried. Looking at Su-Che, who was only a few years older than him, he couldn't help but nodded subconsciously. Okay, if you're willing to come and help me, then go and make me a cup of tea. Seriously, although coffee has no effect on me, I still don't like drinking it. Looking at Selena in front of him, Su-Che said warmly. Okay. Obviously, Selena's voice has raised several arcs at this moment, which is mixed with the playful voice unique to girls. It can be seen that because of Su-Che's affirmation, Selena is completely relieved at this moment, and even her mood is much happier. Although it is not that professional, for an undercover spear who controls the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, what he needs is this kind of unprofessionalism. Just keep it a secret. At this point, Su-Che believes that Selena can do it. After all, before her mother died, she was a civil servant of the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, so she was immersed in it. Selena naturally knows how to do it. After Selena left, Su-Che picked up the video from Nick Fury. The video just opened to see Nick Fury leaning back in his chair and looking at himself. Good morning, Nick. Not good at all. Hearing Su-Che's greeting, Nick Fury helplessly pinched his eyebrows. Just now, I received a protest from the military. Stinky boy, what are you provoking their group of? Now they're all protesting to me. Tell me, what's the reason this time? Looking at the video, Nick Fury looks tired at the moment. Obviously, it was caused by not having a good rest in the recent period of time. You have been through a lot of vicissitudes. Even the only remaining eye is full of red blood. Don't investigate the things clearly. You are exhausted. You should have a good rest now. Facing Su-Che's concern, Nick Fury shook his head gently. I have nothing here, so I can only treat it as nothing. As for rest, he really should rest. Before Nick Fury could finish speaking, he suddenly brought his head together, and then complained to Su-Che. For 3 whole days, he hasn't gone back to rest for 3 days. I haven't left the Trident building for 3 days. Sue, you have to talk about Nick properly. If it goes on like this, I'm afraid that before the investigation of the thing is finished, he will be exhausted first. Hearing Hill's words, Su-Che frowned and looked at Nick Fury, who was clearly exhausted in the video. Then he said softly, Nick, let me go back and help you. No, you can't come back now. He heard Su-Che's words. Nick Fury thought for a while, then shook his head and said in denial, it's hard to get you out of this muddy water now. If you come back now, you might get caught in the muddy water again. I have to make sure you are clean now, otherwise even if our final result is the best one, if you want to take over the Aegis from me, I am afraid you will be obstructed by the people in the World Security Council. Having said that, Nick Fury leaned back in his chair, looked at Su-Che and smiled, although it's not the time for the final battle yet. But the results are already clearly visible. Under my control, Aegis has undergone such a big change as S.H.I.E.L.D. I will definitely not be able to continue to control Aegis in the future, and the people in the World Security Council will not let me continue to control Aegis. So you can't get caught in it because of this. But at least, after me, I have to hand over the Aegis to you. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be sorry to Ms. Peggy and Mr. Howard. Looking at Su-Che in the video, Nick Fury said solemnly in his tone. Chapter 41. Okay, don't worry, I will handle this matter. You don't have to worry about me here. Waving his hand and looking at Su-Che, Nick Fury continued. Now let's talk about your affairs with Ross. What's going on? Dr. Bruce Banner. Looking at Nick Fury, Su-Che didn't hide anything, but told all about Dr. Bruce Banner's changes. Listening to Su-Che's remarks, Nick Fury was silent for a moment, then nodded. That is to say, the big guy who calls himself Hulk is actually Bruce Banner mutated because of gamma rays, right? It's understandable if that's the case, but I don't understand why you have a conflict with that guy Ross because of him. I don't know. What interaction did you have with Dr. Bruce Banner? There is no intersection, but it's just an idea of mine. Facing Nick Fury's question, Su-Che leaned back on the chair and smiled. Hulk's ability is very good. It can even be said to be very powerful. Even bullets and missiles can't cause any fatal damage to him. Nick, don't you think this is a good warrior? Although sometimes this warrior will go crazy. But as long as he is properly guided, he will be able to exert his most powerful strength. Having said that, Su-Che was silent for a moment. I had an idea since Tony Stark announced on TV that he was Iron Man. We all know that in the vast universe, there are countless planets with life, and our Earth is not alone. Like the Skrulls in our Aegis, I still remember the scene when you told me there were aliens in this world and brought me to see the Skrulls. At that time I thought, who can guarantee that all aliens are like the Skrulls? There is no coveting of the Earth? Hearing Su-Che say this, Nick Fury nodded slightly. Go ahead, I want to hear your thoughts. My thinking is that since the Earth is not alone, there must be planets in the universe that are older than the Earth. I think whether it is technology, strength, or other aspects, compared with them, our Earth can't even be on the top side. So if one day, when the aliens from the ancient planets in the universe invade our Earth and want to enslave us or even destroy us, what will we fight? Technology can't beat it, and strength can't beat it. Do we just die in battle and hand over the Earth to those aliens? Having said this, Su-Che said with a serious expression, I never believe that all aliens are full of kindness towards the Earth. This is also the reason why I would rather confront Ross. Since technology can't beat it, then we should start with the most primitive but most effective means. I want to form a team of all the strong guys. Maybe they have all kinds of problems, all kinds of troubles. Maybe in the future, we will never use this team. But if one day, aliens really want to attack our Earth, then they are the last guarantee of our Earth. Hearing Su-Che's words, Nick Fury was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Actually, when I knew that the Earth is not alone in the universe, I had such an idea. It is also for this reason that the Tianjin Bureau will focus on the universe. It's like Aegis is in charge of Earth, and Heavenly Sword is in charge of outer space. Okay, your reason convinced me. As for the protests of the army and the council, let them go to hell. Speaking of this, Nick Fury's expression became serious. Since you have this idea, Sue, I will fully support you. From now on, I allow you to form a team with the goal of super ability, expenses, selection of personnel, and troublesome handling. You can handle it completely. This matter is headed by you, so you don't need to be responsible to anyone. Unless it is necessary, even if it is Aegis, it will not issue any orders to the team you formed. Listening to Nick Fury's words, Su-Che replied with the same serious expression. Yes, sir. After the video hangs up, Maria Hill suddenly laughed. It's as expected that you brought it out with your hands. Even the worries and thoughts are surprisingly consistent. Nick, sometimes I think, if it weren't for his different skin color, I would even suspect that he is related to you by blood. Listening to Maria Hill's words, Nick Fury also smiled and shook his head. If you want to say that he is my illegitimate child, just say it directly, but everyone knows that this is nonsense. However, his idea coincides with my idea of forming a superhero team. It's just that I didn't expect that now he has set his sights on this place. It seems that after several years of experience, I can give him the Aegis with complete confidence. Having said this, Nick Fury was silent for a moment. Anyway, the name of this team must be called Avengers. Even though I didn't set it up myself, I've been thinking about this name for a long time. By the way, you should know, why would I agree with his idea? After all, if I were any other person, I wouldn't rest assured that such a threatening team would be handed over to others to form. Looking at Hill, Nick Fury asked with a smile, because of his character and ability, and your trust in him? Faced with Nick Fury's consideration, Maria Hill replied, not only these, but also because of his strength. Leaning back in his chair, Nick Fury looked at Hill and said, over the years, everyone has seen his character, ability, and means, so they are convinced of him. But unfortunately, everyone subconsciously forgets how powerful he really is. I still remember the terrifying ability that burst out from him when he was only 10 years old. Actually, on that day, I had the idea of pulling him into the super ability team. Oh, he is the second person I expected to join the team. Definitely before that, I have to train for a while. I just didn't expect, oh, this stinky boy actually started to form this team by himself. Tisk. It's really a generation that is more powerful than a generation. He shook his head mockingly, but Hill looked at Nick Fury's smile and shook his head speechlessly. During this time, only when Su-Che is mentioned, will Nick Fury have a real smile on his face. Don't tell me that. I know what you're thinking, Nick, and it's been enough for me to help you control S.H.I.E.L.D for years. Don't think about it. Let me continue to assist Sue after you eliminate Hydra and retire under the accountability of the World Security Council. When you retire, I should give myself some time off too. When the time comes, you should hand over your damn pager from the last century to Sue. Looking at Nick Fury with a heartfelt smile, because of the mention of Su-Che, Maria Hill said I want to rest too. Chapter 42. 3 days later, the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. Sir, Tony Stark seems addicted to being a good neighbor to the townspeople. Handing over the report to Su-Che, Selena helped Su-Che pour the black tea and complained. For the past 3 days, Tony Stark has been patrolling in the sky. If you see something happening, you will go there as soon as possible. If it's just a general robbery, or it's life-threatening to the masses, that's all. But what's more extreme is that he will take care of the lost cats and dogs. If this continues, he will not transform into a hero who is beneficial to the world according to your ideas, but will become I don't know how to say it. After taking the black tea that Selena handed over, Su-Che gave a thank you and nodded lightly. It's really too much. But if you lose a pet, it's very convenient to use JRVIS to find it. After all, others don't know, but you can't hide it from me. There are still satellites of Stark Industry in space, so it is very convenient to find lost pets. But sir, this is not an inconvenient thing. Selena pouted and said helplessly, you told me that you hoped Tony Stark would become Iron Man. In your hope, Tony will become a person who is helpful to the world. And it is the superhero who protects this world. In fact, This result is what everyone wants to see. After all, his father is Mr. Howard, but he followed the route you secretly set. But now he has obviously gone wrong, and even has a tendency to go crazy. You can imagine, just for that thank you. He even went into the sewers in a steel battle suit to clean up the rust? Is this what he should do? Hearing Selena's words, Su-Che suddenly laughed. Seriously, Tony Stark turned into a good neighbor like little Spider-Man, which is very inconsistent no matter how you look at it. Okay, give up the supervision of Tony Stark for the time being, and I'll find Tony myself for the rest. By the way, how is Dr. Banner? Are you still used to staying in the research room on the 12th floor? After taking a sip of black tea, Su-Che asked Selena. It seems that he still prefers our laboratory. Hearing Su-Che asked about Hulk, Selena replied directly. Dr. Banner has been immersed in the laboratory for the past 3 days, except for eating, sleeping, and cleaning up personal hygiene. And it's not that uneasy feeling that I had just after going from that big green guy back to Dr. Banner. I inquired about his state from the side and found that his state is not bad, and his mood is very stable, except for the single-minded desire to study Gamma, and then eliminate the obsession of turning into Hulk once angered. The rest of the time, Dr. Banner is still very peaceful. Oh yes, he said, let me say thank you to you for your protection. If there is anything that needs him, then he is willing to cooperate. Hearing Selena say this, Su-Che nodded with satisfaction. This is no problem. As long as no one stimulates Dr. Banner, then it doesn't matter. With Dr. Banner here, we can also start. Let Susan start an investigation into the identity of the researchers. If there is any problem, report it to me and deal with it directly. Yes, sir. Hearing Su-Che's order, Selena immediately accepted the order. At the same time in Queens, in an ordinary house. This is the 3rd time. Boss Carl, and now there's a lot of noise all over Queens, saying there are vampires. Looking at the now air-dried corpse on the ground, it seems that the blood and even the water in the whole body have completely disappeared. Martin Lewis says to Carl, vampires? Huh. I don't believe such a damn thing exists in this world. With that said, Carl came to the mummy, slowly crouched on the ground, and then started touching the mummy in front of him. Crack! With Carl's light touch, without even exerting any force, the mummified corpse's arm snapped in the next moment. Even where it was broken, bone powder appeared. Obviously, it's not just the loss of blood, but the loss of water in the entire body in an instant. Even the spinal cord inside the bones is gone. With that said, Carl got up, took off his gloves and threw them in the trash. Has this guy's neighbor heard any noise? This is the weirdest place. Listening to Carl's question, Martin Lewis frowned and said, this guy's neighbor saw him yesterday. At that time, he was a little drunk and stumbled, and there was nothing unusual about him. According to his neighbors, this man named Seth goes out to work on time, every day at 7:30 in the morning. It has been 2.5 years without interruption. Even during the holidays, I will go out at 7:30 on time. It's like he has some kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Not even a second. As he spoke, Martin Lewis handed Carl the information on the man named Seth. But today he didn't go out as usual, so the neighbors knocked on the door to ask, worried about what happened. And then I found this scene. I investigated Seth's relationship. He is usually a very kind person. He has never quarreled with anyone, and has no enemies or anything like that. Having said that, Martin watched his colleagues put Seth's body in the shroud, and then said softly to Carl, Boss Carl, the 3 bodies are in the same state. It all changed from a living person to this in one night, and now the whole Queens is panicking. We must solve this matter as soon as possible. That's why the state police will contact us immediately, because they have no way to deal with such a thing. Hearing Martin's words, Carl nodded. There is no enemy, no grudges. Usually the life circle is very clean. But inexplicably, after one night, it has become this ghost. This is a bit interesting. Let the forensic brothers examine it carefully to see if the 3 bodies have anything in common. At the same time, let the brothers in the intelligence team investigate the similarities between these 3 guys. No matter what, we must use the fastest way to solve this matter. No matter what, you can't add trouble to Boss Sue. 12 years of hard work have finally brought him to the point where he has the sole control today. When it's not necessary, you can't use this kind of thing to distract him. Chapter 43. Hey, you can't do that, man. Those are my spring rolls. Looking at Su-Che, who picked up the spring roll and ate it without hesitation, Tony Stark hurriedly reached out and picked up another spring roll from the plate. It seemed like a demonstration, and he chewed it directly. While chewing, he looked at Su-Che and complained, "Did you come to find me today just to grab my food? I'm not as boring as you. It's been many years since the prospectus, and I haven't eaten this kind of food." Picking up another spring roll from the plate, Su-Che said while eating, "You've been very busy these days, not only helping to find lost pets, but also helping to clear the blocked drains? TSK, is this going to transform into a volunteer? Huh, a billionaire volunteer in a steel armor? That's really funny." With that said, Su-Che will pick up the spring rolls again and continue eating. "Anyway, save me a few." Looking at Su-Che's actions, Tony Stark said with a speechless expression, "According to your current status, what do you want to eat? Just need a sentence." With that said, Tony Stark picked up a lettuce leaf and chewed it wickedly. "Don't be a child. You are a billionaire anyway, and you still feel sorry for these spring rolls? Although I said so, but looking at the plate, there are less than 3 spring rolls left." Su-Che thought about it, then picked up one and handed it to Tony Stark, then picked up the other 2 and prepared to eat it himself. "Damn, you are still the head of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. You're too embarrassed to talk about me." After reluctantly eating the last spring roll, Tony Stark looked at Su-Che and asked, "So what? Are you here to persuade me not to do these things? It seems that you told me some time ago that instead of feeling guilty, it's better to take action and do something within your power. I think it's pretty good too. At least someone cheered me, someone thanked me." Patting his stomach, Tony Stark looked at Su-Che and raised his brows with a smile. "This feels great, at least not before, when others cheered because of my wealth and status." "You sure?" Seeing Tony's seemingly smug expression, Su-Che picked up a tissue and wiped his hands, then asked, "Are you sure you like this feeling?" "Definitely, I am. How could he possibly like it?" Before Tony Stark could finish with the smug look on his face, Pepper came downstairs. Handing Su-Che a cup of black tea, he said, "He's just uneasy, but he doesn't know how to do it. That's why these things are done. In fact, he thinks he has no other choice, and he doesn't know why he is so anxious. It's like if you don't do these things, you won't have a chance in the future." Handing another copy of coffee to Tony angrily, Peepo turned his head to look at Su-Che and said, "I asked him many times, but he didn't want to say it." "All right, you are friends, so he should be willing to tell you. Sue, please help me to persuade him well. He is very wrong here recently." Pointing to his head, Pepe didn't care about the embarrassing look on Tony's face at the moment. After watching Pepe leave, Tony Stark spread his hands towards Su-Che and put the coffee on the table. Then he picked up another bottle of green liquid and took a gulp. "I suddenly feel that coffee is not that good, but this is the best. Definitely, you may not like it after all. The taste of this thing is hard to describe. But if you get used to it, then you might fall in love with it." Shaking the cup in his hand, Tony Stark blinked at Su-Che and said, listening to what Peepo just said, looking at the green liquid in Tony Stark's glass, Su-Che understood in an instant why Tony Stark has been so urgent recently. This is to use the last stage of life to do some good deeds and make up for some things in the past. "Well, in fact, I have been busy with the Aegis branch recently and forgot about Tony's palladium poisoning. No wonder he has become so eager for quick success, because he knew that he didn't have much time left. JRVIS, how is Tony doing now? How long will he live?" Looking at Tony's neck, there was no blackness at the moment, symbolizing the symptoms of palladium poisoning. But Su-Che still asked JRVIS, "Walter, what do you mean?" Listening to Su-Che's words, Tony Stark blinked his eyes and looked at Su-Che and asked in confusion, "Sir, Mr. Stark's current body." "Shut up, JRVS, I'm your master." Before JRVIS finished speaking to Su-Che, Tony Stark hurriedly stopped JRVIS. "The symptoms of palladium poisoning are very obvious. I said that something has been wrong with you recently." Pointing to the bright energy reactor on Tony Stark, Su-Che said directly, "In my future plans, Tony, you occupy a large percentage. So man, don't worry, I won't let you die in palladium poison." After that, Su-Che turned around and left. Hey man, wait a minute, Kong Busy, how did you know I was poisoned with palladium? And do you mean you have a solution for this? Man, wait for me, don't go so fast. Kong Busy, wait for me to put on my armor and leave with you." Watching Su-Che turn around and leave, Tony Stark hurriedly chased after him. For some reason, Tony always has an inexplicable trust in Su-Che. Brothers and sisters, is anyone watching? The more you write, the less confident you are. Is anyone watching? Chapter 44. Oh, my dear. Your office is so big. New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, inside Su-Che's office. While visiting Su-Che's office, Tony Stark kept shaking his head. Wow. The restroom, treadmill, exercise room. This floor is your office. It's really worthy of being the controller of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. Looking at the size of the office, it's even bigger than the average small company. And I'm also the chairman of Stark Industries. But comparing my office to yours is like comparing an aircraft carrier to a quinquecopter. He looked at Tony Stark, who kept talking while following behind him. Su-Che also said helplessly, I have never liked to treat myself badly. So since I am the boss of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, what kind of office do I want? What's more, I just expanded on the original basis. You think I don't want to fill the entire Aegis building with staff? Going through the hallway and returning to the office, Su-Che asked Selena to make 2 cups of tea for herself and Tony. After Selena brought the black tea over, Su-Che drank the black tea leisurely. Why don't you add sugar? Although the aftertaste is very glycolic, there is still a bit of bitterness. After drinking a sip of black tea, Tony Stark smacked his mouth, then raised his eyebrows and looked at Su-Che with a smile. Don't tell me, you have to stay healthy? I'm not an outlier. Putting the tea on the table, Su-Che looked at Tony Stark and said, I have sent someone to Trident headquarters to retrieve the relics of your father, Mr. Howard Stark. I think with Mr. Howard's relic, you should be able to change the palladium poisoning thing. My father's relic? Hearing Su-Che say this, Tony Stark frowned, as if thinking of something. Then he looked at Su-Che and asked curiously, do you think I am more talented? Or is my dad more talented? Definitely Mr. Howard Stark. Looking at Tony Stark's burning eyes, Su-Che replied without hesitation. Cut. I knew you would say that. After all, in your eyes, my father is one of the 3 founders of Aegis, so you naturally think that my father is more genius than me. But in fact, I think I'm more talented than my brother. Tony Stark was not surprised by Su-Che's answer, but he felt a little unwilling. Or, I'll come to your Aegis to make a name? Like a consultant or something? Trust me, dude. You'll know what a genius this guy named Tony Stark is in front of you after spending time together. Raising his eyebrows, he looked at Su-Che proudly. Tony Stark thinks that it is not impossible to come to Aegis as a consultant by himself. After all, Aegis was founded by his father, and it is also his father's hard work. In addition, I am friends with Su-Che, so I should come and help. After all, I don't have many friends, let alone friends who can tell the truth. Others want to be friends with themselves, either because they covet their property or their status. So for a friend like Su-Che who exchanged his sincerity for his sincerity, Tony Stark felt that he should cherish it even more. Well, that's what Tony Stark's character is. Anyone who has seen the movie universe knows that he is the kind of person who treats him a little bit better, and he is 10 times, 100 times more, and he has to dig out his heart and lungs. How to say? This guy is obviously middle-aged, but he still wants to be like a child. Innocence. Well, this sentence is not derogatory. The heart of a child is never a derogatory term. In the face of Tony's request, Su-Che did not refuse, but did not agree. After all, for now, the most important thing is to get rid of Tony's palladium poisoning. While the two were chatting, Selena knocked on the door and walked in. He whispered something in Su-Che's ear. Su-Che looked at Tony and smiled. Wait for me here for a while. I have some things to deal with here. Go. Leave me alone. With a wave of his hand, Tony Stark was lying on the sofa and smiled at Su-Che. Anyway, until my father's relics are brought, I will stay here and stay here. By the way, since you grabbed my spring rolls at lunch, you must treat me well at night. Looking at the lazy Tony Stark, Su-Che shook his head and walked outside. The reception room on the 11th floor. Mr. Su, this is the compensation I promised you, and I sent it here in person. Please check it. Pointing to the box in front of her, Mrs. Gao said with a smile. There's no need to check or something. After all, you hand associations don't dare to deceive us Aegis. Whether it's me or you, I think everyone knows it very well. After signaling Madame Gao to sit down, Su-Che came to the opposite side. I'm curious, what's your next plan for the hand association? Hearing Su-Che's question, Mrs. Gao smiled without concealment. We are going to relocate to the City of Angels. After all, you said, give us some time to move out of New York. In the City of Angel, although it is not Jean Bing's Hell's Kitchen, his influence over there should not be underestimated. So, as a collaborator, the City of Angel may be the next station for the hand. Facing Madame Gao's frankness, Su-Che nodded in satisfaction and said, although the City of Angel is beautiful, it is indeed a good place to go under the night. where evil is rampant. The most important thing is that it's not my territory for the time being. Since it's decided, let's move out as soon as possible. I don't want to send elites for the second time to wipe out all the strength of the Hand Association. Definitely, Mr. Sue. Within 10 days at the slowest, I will move all the New York branch of the Hand Association. In the face of Su Che's warning, Mrs. Gao still smiled and showed no anger at all. That's right. People have to bow their heads under the eaves. As for the people who sent the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, wipe out all the hands. This point, Mrs. Gao still believes very much. After all, a person who is so ruthless that he will send someone to destroy the subordinate who has not completed the task. Mrs. Gao did not dare to be careless. After Mrs. Gao left, Su Che opened the box in front of her. Looking at the box, there are rows of neatly arranged bottles. Su Che picked up a metal bottle filled with blue liquid and looked at it. Is this the most special metal on Earth? It's really beautiful. When you're done, put the vibranium-filled bottle back into the case. Immediately call Selena and ask her to file this box. No one saw that a note with special contact information was put into his pocket by Su Che. Chapter 45. S.H.I.E.L.D. Spear Bureau Headquarters. Looking at the encrypted message on the phone, Zhang Xian's eyes flashed with joy. Then he said to a young man beside him, "Linen, help me get the saber over here." "Okay, Zhang uncle." Hearing Zhang Xian's order, the young man named Linen nodded, then closed his eyes. Soon, the door of the office was knocked. Pushing open the door and walking in, looking at Zhang Xian who was sitting behind the desk, Saber said with a speechless expression, "No, now that technology is so advanced, why don't you just give me a call? It really doesn't work. Send me a text message and I can see it. You always let the little linen baby talk in my head. What's the matter?" Hearing Saber's complaint, Zhang Xian didn't care, but said with a smile, "It takes a lot of time to make a phone call. It's better to call someone in linen faster." Cut. A voice suddenly appeared in his head. Who can get used to it? Although he said so, but looking at the expressionless Linen on the side, Saber shook his head and then looked at Zhang Xian carelessly. "Okay, Boss Zhang. What's going on this time? Don't tell me that those with super abilities are starting to make trouble again. I don't believe that under the supervision of our God's spear, that little b*********** D dares to abuse super abilities." Listening to Saber's words, Zhang Xian smiled and wrote a line of words on the paper, and then handed it over to Saber. "Saber, this time I will send you on a trip and bring something back by the way. No, this is the address and contact information. In addition, the purchase funds this time are very sufficient. You can buy as many as the other party has." Hearing Zhang Xian say to let himself go on a trip, Saber glanced at Zhang Xian in surprise. Taking the note, looking at the location marked on the note, the Saber's nose almost crooked. "No, Boss Zhang, you tell me this is a trip? What's so beautiful about this place? A place where birds don't poop is also called tourism?" "Okay, don't be picky, Saber. This time the mission is very important, and it is even a matter of whether the weapon of our divine spear can be upgraded to another level. So you can ask the weather which to accompany you. In any case, this time the mission can only be successful and not allowed to fail." Having said this, Zhang Xian was silent for a moment, then looked at the Saber and said solemnly, "I don't know how much our people have spent in order to get this information, but no matter what, we can't live up to his hard work." Looking at Zhang Xian's solemn expression, Saber was a little surprised at first, and then suddenly seemed to think of something. Immediately, he asked tentatively, "Did Xiao Che send it back?" Looking at Zhang Xian's expression of neither affirmation nor denial, Saber then nodded solemnly. "Understood. Boss Zhang can rest assured and promise to complete the task." After he said solemnly, Saber returned to his carefree appearance. "But what exactly did you ask me to buy? You are so fancy." Even Xiao Che went to great lengths to find out. "Boss Xing, give your brother a low vote. The witch and I should be prepared, right? 70 years ago, before the Aegis was established, you still remember how to deal with that soldier from S.H.I.E.L.D. Definitely, the Steve Rogers who is hailed as a legendary captain in the West." Hearing Zhang Xian's words, Saber nodded slightly. "A very good guy, but his strength is a little worse, and he even died with John Schmidt of S.H.I.E.L.D. Mother, if Hydra appeared under our noses back then, where would it be worth so much effort? What was the thing called by the devil summoned back then? It's a monster with 9 heads anyway. It seems to be called a big snake or something. Wasn't it hacked to death by the first generation of Red Star and the swordsman boss? But this thing has to do with that Steve Rogers?" Looking at Zhang Xian, Saber asked curiously, Facing the curiosity of the saber, Zhang Xian also nodded without concealment. In those days, Steve Rogers' shield was made of a metal called Vibranium. What kind of metal Vibranium is, I don't think I need to say more. This time, the information Xiao-Che sent with all his energy is a Vibranium dealer. I don't care how good the relationship between our Spear and the King of Wakanda is. After all, the relationship is a relationship, and the Vibranium dealer is the Vibranium dealer. Can't you say the same thing? Hearing that boss Zhang Xian mention Vibranium, Saber's eyes lit up instantly. Yes, boss Zhang Xian, you are right. A friend is a friend. Vibranium is Vibranium. Don't mix it up. I'll go find the witch, and then I'll go get the Vibranium back. No, I'll buy it back. After all, you can get Vibranium constantly through cooperation, but you can't kill the chicken and get the egg. Hey, he smiled. Saber was just about to go out, but every few steps, he turned around and asked softly, would you like to take this opportunity to see Xiao-Che? I haven't been home for 12 years, and I haven't seen my relatives. I think this child must be very distressed. Hearing Saber's words, Zhang Xian was silent for a moment, then shook his head. Don't see each other at this juncture. The Aegis is not very peaceful now, and don't worry, Xiao-Che, this child, is more powerful than we imagined. Hearing the words of boss Zhang Xian, Saber was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. After watching Saber leave, Zhang Xian took out his mobile phone and looked at the phone screen, the number that was so familiar that he could memorize it. Hesitation for a long time, but still did not press. I don't recommend that Dr. Banner accompany you to study this thing. Listening to Tony Stark's request, Su-Che denied without hesitation. You are too unreliable now. I don't want to summon Hulk out of your curiosity, and I don't know what you're thinking yet. Tony, change your curiosity. I don't want to see you one day wearing armor and being smashed to scrap by Hulk, unless your future nickname Iron Man becomes Scrap Iron Man. As soon as Su-Che's voice fell, Dr. Banner couldn't help nodding his head. I agree with Sue's words, Tony. The look you just looked at me was wrong. Especially your eyes lit up after knowing that as soon as I get stimulated, I will transform into Hulk. That's why I don't want to be alone with you. Okong busy. Guys, in your eyes, I'm so unreliable. Listening to Su-Che and Bruce Banner, Tony Stark spreads his hands and looks like I'm hurt. Very unreliable. Facing Tony's faint hurt expression, both Su-Che and Dr. Bruce Banner nodded at the same time. Depend on. Putting up a middle finger at Su-Che and Dr. Banner, Tony Stark wore a battle armor with a speechless expression and carried Howard Stark's relic that he brought back from the Trident building. Get ready to fly back to your villa. Chapter 46. 3 days later, New York, Queens, in a residential building. That's the way it is, boss. This is the 5th time this month. Looking at the very shriveled corpse on the ground, it seemed to be air-dried, and it would turn into powder with just a touch. Carl said to Su-Che with a tired face. I didn't want to bother you, boss, with these things, but the problem is, we couldn't investigate any useful information at all. 5 times of this kind of incident. All the victims have nothing to do with it. It's more like committing a crime right away. But unfortunately, we have found nothing about the methods used by the other party, and we can't even find out the forensic brothers of our Aegis. Listening to Carl's words, he looked at the corpse curled up on the ground, as if all the water in his body had evaporated in an instant. Su-Che frowned and asked, didn't the neighbors hear anything? No. Facing Su-Che's question, Carl shook his head bitterly. Boss, the 5 murdered people, except that they are all men, have no connection at all, and everyone seems to be dead in an instant. There is no sign of struggle or fight in the room. Now, there are rumors of a vampire incident in Queens, and it's been a lot of trouble. If it goes on like this, I'm afraid there will be even bigger problems. Listening to Carl's words, Su-Che stretched out his hand, took the information of the 5 victims from the hands of the action team members on the side, and looked at it. It can be said that these 5 people have different occupations, identities, and ages. The youngest is 23 and the oldest is 54. Some are supermarket porters, some are company employees. Not only do they not have any intersection, but they even have nothing in common except gender. Who first discovered this body? Turning his head to look at Carl, Su-Che asked. It's the kid next door. Hearing Su-Che's question, Carl said quickly, Kid. Watching Carl point next door, Su-Che walked over. After a while, the next door to the incident. Because Aunt May's Red Date biscuits are so delicious, Uncle next door likes them very much, and every time he spends $1 to buy some. Every 2 days, I go to help Aunt May deliver to the uncle next door. But after knocking on the door today, the door opened by itself and then, looking at Su-Che in front of him, the tears on Peter Parker's face, who was a little frightened by the scene in the morning, have not disappeared. But he can still say it clearly. After speaking, little Peter Parker buried his head beside Aunt May, who was constantly comforting him. But soon, he asked Su-Che timidly, "This uncle, they all said that these things were done by vampires. Even the school is on vacation. Are there really vampires in this world?" Although he was very scared, little Peter Parker asked curiously, "Definitely not." Looking at the little Peter Parker who was only a few years old in front of him, Su-Che stretched out his hand and gently rubbed Peter Parker's head. "There is no such thing as blood clan in this world, although I don't know yet what is going on. But it should be done by the other party using high technology that we have not yet mastered." Seeing Su-Che's gentle smile, little Peter Parker seemed to be a little more daring. "So, what kind of high-tech? Is it high-tech like Iron Man?" Hearing Su-Che mention technology, little Peter Parker's eyes lit up at once. "Almost, but it shouldn't be made by Iron Man." Definitely not Iron Man, uncle. He's a good guy. I've heard that he saved a lot of people and helped others find lost pets. So even if Iron Man uncle is suspected, he certainly wouldn't do it. When it comes to Tony Stark, little Peter Parker seems to forget his fear, constantly talking about how awesome Tony Stark is. It can be seen that the little Peter Parker at the moment is definitely a big fan of Tony. I just don't know what Tony's expression will be when he hears that little Peter Parker exonerates him. Maybe in the little Spider-Man in the future, in the heart of the little Peter Parker in front of him, any high-tech that no one else knows about is invented by Tony Stark. After chatting with little Peter Parker for a while, Su-Che got up and left the room. After ordering his subordinates to clean up the shriveled corpse, Su-Che stood alone in the room with his eyes closed and sensed. His mental power was maximized in an instant, and he checked every corner of the room. Unfortunately, I didn't find any useful clues. I keep thinking about what happened in the Marvel movie universe, or the movie of the Aegis Agent. Unfortunately, there is no one that can match this. It seems that this is a completely new occurrence, or an event that has never been recorded at all. But that's right. From the time Iron Man said that sentence to the last snap of his fingers, there are too many things in the movie universe that haven't been recorded. It's like the supernatural cases that Aegis has handled over the years from its establishment to the end. Although no cobweb tracks have been found, not even the slightest clue. Inexplicably, there was a smile on the corner of Su-Che's mouth. The more difficult it is, the less troublesome things you see, the more interesting Su-Che finds it. After all, these years, I have relied on these troublesome and headache things to play time. Chapter 47. Yo, are you having trouble? Looking at Su-Che in the office, who has been studying these 5 cases. After Tony Stark flew over in his armor, he looked at Su-Che triumphantly and said, "The palladium poisoning has been resolved?" Seeing the smug look on Tony's face at the moment, Su-Che asked with a smile, "Definitely, don't you look at who I am? I'm Tony Stark, the greatest of the century." "Well, Mr. Howard Stark is more talented." Before the smug Tony Stark could finish speaking, Su-Che hit him directly. Hearing Su-Che's words, the corner of Tony Stark's mouth twitched, and then he raised a middle finger at Su-Che. F***K, but it doesn't matter anyway, your words can't hit me now. With that said, Tony Stark unceremoniously pulled up a chair and sat across from Su-Che. "Actually, I have reconciled with my dad. Although, it's more than 10 years late, but it's still reconciled after all, isn't it? This is a good thing for me." Looking at Tony Stark's heartfelt words at the moment, Su-Che nodded slightly. "Since you have reconciled with your obsession, why are you here again? Shouldn't you be wearing your armor right now to look for missing pets, or to unclog a clogged drain for someone else? I heard that because of you, many people now deliberately block the drains in front of their homes, just to be able to see you. You should be happy, after all. This proves that you still have some charm." Listening to Su-Che's ridicule, Tony Stark's eyes almost rolled to the sky. "What did I think in the first place that I became friends with this nasty guy like you? And the guy named Nick Fury in your Aegis must have a bad head, or his eyes are dizzy. I will give up a genius like me, and then cultivate you as the future of Aegis. I now strongly demand to inherit S.H.I.E.L.D. and then fire you." Looking at Tony with a sworn face, Su-Che shrugged his shoulders and said, "Sorry, your name is now the consultant of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch, and I am in charge of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D. branch. So my current position is much higher than yours. I can only fire you, not you." depend on. Hearing Su-Che say this, Tony Stark patted his head immediately. I wanted to become a New York S.H.I.E.L.D. consultant to help you, which was the biggest mistake. By the way, where's your little assistant? Why haven't you come to help make tea? In the past 2 days, in addition to researching new elements at home, I have been trying to drink tea without sweeteners. Not to mention, apart from being a little unaccustomed to drinking it at first, I slowly discovered that it is actually quite good, so much that I don't drink coffee much now. Listen to JRVIS. Tea is healthier than coffee. Man, is this the reason for your superhuman abilities? Looking at Su-Che curiously with his head outstretched, Tony Stark asked with a wink. Looking at Su-Che's middle finger, Tony Stark laughed, then looked at the document on the table and picked it up. After taking a closer look, Tony Stark turned from a state of ridicule to a serious one. Is this the most troublesome thing for you right now? Blood clan rumors? Make a living person lose all the blood and water in the body in an instant. That's kind of interesting. But since there have been 5 such incidents, why didn't I hear it on the news? Putting down the information in his hand, Tony Stark looked at Su-Che and asked. Looking at Su-Che, he didn't answer, but the orange was peeled. Tony Stark thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay, let the right to know go to hell. You must have ordered this thing to be pressed. Hearing Tony's words, Su-Che handed half of the oranges to Tony Stark. No way, before this matter is resolved. If it expands, then people will be panicked. In any case, I will never let this happen. Otherwise, it would be my dereliction of duty. At present, the most important thing is to solve this matter as soon as possible. If one day is delayed, the residents of Queens will be afraid for a day. Taking the oranges that Su-Che handed over, Tony Stark nodded while eating. That's right. After all, if this matter spreads, it will definitely cause a lot of turmoil. If you need my help, just say, I will definitely try to help. Do you need me to let JRVS call out all these people's lives? This is not necessary, but through these 5 cases, I found an interesting thing. Having said that, Su-Che got up and turned on the holographic projection on the desktop. The next moment, the graphic of Queens appeared in front of Su-Che and Tony Stark. Here's a graphic of the whole of Queens, and then I tried to mark a dot where the 5 victims were last in their lives. With that said, as Su-Che flattened the holographic projection, magnified the 5 points, and finally pulled it up, a pattern appeared directly in front of the 2 people. Look at what a pattern looks like. Hearing Su-Che's words, Tony Stark threw the last orange into his mouth, then stood up and took a closer look. This is defective 6-pointed star? Raise your hand, connect the 5 dots, then fill in a dot where defective holographic projection is, and then a shining hexagram appears in front of Su-Che and Tony Stark. Looking at the 6-pointed star in front of him, Tony Stark folded his shoulders and pondered for a moment. The shield of God, or the legend that called King David? That's right. Hearing Tony's words, Su-Che recognized. In addition, from the first case until now, almost every 2 days, there will be a case like this. So I guess that the last case happened. It should be tomorrow night. How about it? Are you interested in watching it together? Looking at Tony Stark, Su-Che smiled and sent out the invitation. Chapter 48. The next evening, on the rooftop of a residential building in Queens. Thank you. I don't like to eat this. I don't even understand. Don't you get tired of eating this every day? Looking at the cheeseburger that Tony handed over, Su-Che waved his hand and refused. I can't get tired of eating. After all, this represents wages. But you are not of this class. Well, you're right, but I still like to eat this. The 2 of them sat on the roof, blowing the night wind and saying some unnutritious words. Mainly Su-Che teases, Tony refutes. After all, if 2 big men are too boring to sit here, if they don't make fun of each other, the atmosphere will be a little wrong. Boss, everyone is in place, and the surrounding streets are also blocked, waiting for the target to appear at any time. In the earphones, Carl's words came out. Su-Che nodded and said, very good. All the brothers in the action team stand by and wait for the appearance of suspicious people. Yes, boss. After Carl finished speaking, Tony Stark suddenly said, actually, there is no need to block the streets at all. At night, very few people will come out, especially in Queens. No one wants to use their own lives to poison them, right? Maybe when you just go out, you will encounter a robbery, and if you are a little reasonable, your wallet will be empty. If it's unreasonable, first a bullet, and then take the wallet from the body. Speaking, Tony Stark spread his shoulders. So sometimes I say, I like New York, but at the same time I don't like New York. Kong busy, don't look at me like that. I can't decide that Stark Industries is the largest arms dealer? What's more, didn't I announce the closure of Stark's industrial weapons manufacturing department 6 months ago? With that said, Tony Stark ate the last cheeseburger in his stomach. Not to mention, there is still a so-called blood clan thing in Queens. Dude, do you think there is this legend, and there are 5 shriveled corpses? Who would dare to go out at night? Hearing Tony Stark's words, S.H.I.E.L.D nodded slightly. You're right. But the problem is, I can't gamble on people's hearts with these speculations. In fact, as long as anything is done by me, it must be foolproof. Maybe Tony, you're right, people are panicking at this time, and no one dares to go out at night. But what if? No one can guarantee that this is an absolute thing. Looking at Tony Stark, S.H.I.E.L.D said seriously, since it's not an absolute thing, then I have to be perfect. Anything even a 1% chance, I will kill it in the cradle. I don't like gambling, especially when it's about other people's lives. That's why, at the age of 22, I became the helmsman of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch. Even in the future, he will become the helmsman of S.H.I.E.L.D. And other people in their 30s and 40s who have worked for S.H.I.E.L.D for decades still can only wait for retirement or the reason for their death in the mission. Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D say that, Tony Stark nodded in approval. After a while, he suddenly reacted. So, are you talking about me, right? Kong busy man. I know that it's a very stupid thing to try the power of Hulk. Didn't I also pay a price for a Mark armor? Oh, how dare you say this? If I didn't find out in time this morning and rescued you, you would have been torn to shreds by Hulk on the spot. Thinking that during the day in the training room, Hulk almost dismantled Tony Stark, S.H.I.E.L.D was speechless for a while. Knowing that Hulk is so strong, he has to provoke it. Fortunately, I found out earlier and rescued Tony Stark from Hulk. But don't say, the punch against Hulk was quite cool. It seems that from the Eagle's Nest until now, in the 12 years, even in the face of any enemy, he has never done his best. Definitely, the price is that the training room is completely destroyed, and Selena is looking for someone to rebuild it. Well, it's not my own money anyway. The funding from the Trident headquarters is 3 times that of other areas. Okay, I'm really reckless in this matter. I'll admit it. Looking at S.H.I.E.L.D with his hands raised, Tony made a state of surrender. Until I develop anti-Hulk armor, I will definitely not be provoking Dr. Banner. By the way, why do the other people in the Aegis building call you the boss? And some other people call you the chief? Watching S.H.I.E.L.D, Tony does the final blunt topic twist. Seeing the embarrassed look on Tony's face, S.H.I.E.L.D also knew that he couldn't continue criticizing him at this time. After all, Tony is a face guy too. Now that he knows that what happened in the morning was reckless and stupid, there is no need for him to continue criticizing. The people who call me the boss are those who have trained and grown up with me since childhood. The reason why they call me that is because my ability and strength are all above them. They are convinced of me, so they have this title. As for the others, they are the original people of the New York S.H.I.E.L.D branch. So you can see from the title, who is the direct line in my hands, who is... Before he could finish speaking, S.H.I.E.L.D instantly turned his head to look at the empty square. Coming. The next moment, the whole person stood up instantly from the upstairs, and his eyes were fixed on the downstairs like a torch. Chapter 49. Below the residential building, a figure is walking fast in the community with a box at the moment. Looking at this figure, it is not very tall, but every step seems to be walking on a steel blade. Stumbled and stumbled like a drunk, but the speed was very fast. I almost fell several times, but it was always miraculously avoided, as if there was an invisible energy that stabilized it the moment it fell to the ground. It's really suspicious, and this person's steps are a little wrong. On the roof, closing the mask of the armor and looking at the state of the man below, Tony Stark said something to S.H.I.E.L.D. He doesn't have the mental power as powerful as S.H.I.E.L.D, so naturally he can't perceive that this man is surrounded by a very strange energy magnetic field at the moment. Stop him. Watching the man walk into the community, S.H.I.E.L.D gave Carl and the others an order directly through his earphones. Following S.H.I.E.L.D.'s order, the Aegis agent, who had already prepared for the next moment, directly stopped the man holding the box from all directions. Do not move. Put down what's in your hand. Raise your hands and kneel on the ground. Looking at the man surrounded in front of him, Carl and the others pointed their weapons at the man and loudly ordered him to put down what he was holding and kneel on the ground. But in the face of dozens of weapons aimed at him, this man did not panic like an ordinary person. Instead, He slowly raised his head and looked at the group of people surrounding him with a dull gaze. You are also here to snatch my treasures. Damn. You are also here to snatch my treasure. As if muttering to himself, as if whispering like a god, a wave of energy spreads from the man's side unconsciously. You are all bad people. You all came to snatch my treasures. Following the man's sudden and sharp voice, the next moment his eyes instantly turned red. Not good. Seeing this scene, S.H.I.E.L.D. instantly jumped down from the 7-story roof. Hey, wait for me. After watching S.H.I.E.L.D. jump down, Tony Stark quickly followed in his armor. Below, as the man's voice became sharper, Carl, who also sensed something was wrong, ordered the trigger to be pulled without hesitation. In an instant, dozens of bullets attacked the man like a rain of fire. But the bullets stopped less than 10 centimeters away from the man who touched him. It seems like there is an invisible wall separating the bullet from the man. You are all bad people and sinners. I will not let you take away my treasure. As the man roared in a sharp voice again, the energy surrounding him spread instantly. Immediately, Carl and the others were blown away by this powerful energy. You all have to die. If you want to snatch the treasure that belongs to me, you all have to die. With red eyes, looking at Carl and the others who flew out backwards, the man constantly waved his hands with open teeth and claws. And that powerful energy seemed to obey orders and rush towards Carl, who was the first. Boom! Before the energy could attack Carl, who was lying on the ground, a fireball fell from the sky in the next moment, directly dispelling the energy. Seeing his energy being dissipated, the man who seemed to be stunned tilted his head and looked at S.H.I.E.L.D. You are also here to snatch my baby. You are also a bad person. You have to die too. He roared at S.H.I.E.L.D. with a shrill voice, and the next moment, a majestic energy attacked S.H.I.E.L.D. in an instant. Standing in front of Carl and the others, S.H.I.E.L.D. spread his hands, and 2 fire dragons instantly formed in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s palms. With a slight wave of his hand, the next moment 2 fire dragons rose into the sky, tearing apart the silent night like dragon roars. Under the astonished gaze of Tony Stark, who had just landed, the next moment 2 fire dragons slammed into the majestic energy. Boom! When the 2 energies collided with each other, there was a violent explosion in the middle of the field. With the energy generated by the explosion, some facilities around the community were instantly destroyed, and the energy generated by the explosion directly blasted the man holding the box away. Before waiting for the man to land, S.H.I.E.L.D. disappeared in place with a teleportation. Soon, a fist like raindrops continued to attack the energy barrier of the man who was flying upside down in the air. Crack! With S.H.I.E.L.D.'s full blow, the next moment the energy barrier surrounding the man burst instantly, making bursts of clack. Bang! As the man fell heavily to the ground, the black box in his hand fell directly the next moment. But this man who was smashed didn't care about the injuries on his body at all, as if he was enchanted and wanted to crawl to the black box. Before he could climb to the side of the box, one foot stepped directly on the box. Give it back to me. Return the baby to? The shrill voice cut through the entire night sky, and the man who fell to the ground stretched out his hand, as if trying to pull the box back. Before the Yi-Shao-like voice was finished, almost in the blink of an eye, a person who was originally alive suddenly became shriveled. Everything came so fast that when no one reacted, just like the other 5 corpses, this man also became weathered. Crack! Crack! With the sound of bursts of shattering, the man who was already shriveled and disregarded directly shattered into countless pieces, and the originally very inconspicuous black box also exudes a strange light. Seeing this scene, even Tony Stark, who is self-proclaimed to be well-informed, couldn't help but take a deep breath. Slowly came to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s side, looked at the corpse that was broken into several pieces, and looked at the box under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s feet. He couldn't help asking in surprise, "What's the situation? Why do you feel that what just happened is so strange?" Damn. The subconscious tells me that existence is reasonable, but I always want to overthrow all my cognitions in the past few decades. I do not know either. Hearing Tony Stark's question, S.H.I.E.L.D. shook his head, and then picked up the box with a strange glow on the ground. The moment the box touched S.H.I.E.L.D.'s hand, a burst of energy seemed to bewitch S.H.I.E.L.D., but in front of its powerful spiritual power, this energy could not affect even the slightest bit of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s consciousness. Everything is made of this box? Looking at the box in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s hand, Tony Stark just wanted to touch it subconsciously, but it was stopped by S.H.I.E.L.D. don't touch this thing. I'm not sure that even if you are wearing a battle armor, you will not be affected by this energy. For now, the best way is to completely destroy this box. As soon as Su-Che's voice fell, in the next moment of darkness, a few old figures staggered out. It's all in vain. It's over. It's all over. You're a sinner. Damn you, you're a sinner. One of the old men looked at Su-Che holding this black box, couldn't help but roared at Su-Che with a twisted expression. The grief and indignation in his voice was as if he was overwhelmed with pain. Chapter 50. I used my mental power to feel these old guys kneeling on the ground with a heartbroken expression. After realizing that they were just a group of ordinary people, Su-Che turned around, looked at Carl and the others who were already up, and asked, "Are you all right?" "It's okay, boss." Hearing Su-Che's question, Carl rubbed his arms, then opened his mask and said with a smile, "Boss, the energy that just kicked us out is very strange. But it didn't cause us much damage. Only one brother was a little unlucky, and his arm was contused when he landed. But for us people, this is not a big deal." After hearing Carl's words, Su-Che was a little relieved. "Damn. You damn bastards. I'm going to curse you. I'm going to curse you all." Listening to the old man who was headed behind him constantly croaking, watching Su-Che frowned. As someone who grew up with him, Carl passed the weapon in his hand very skillfully. Taking the weapon that Carl handed over, Su-Che didn't even have the slightest hesitation. He took up the weapon and aimed at the old guy in the lead. Boom! A bullet passed through the head of the old man's eyebrows without hesitation, and at the same time startled Tony Stark. "No, this is—" Tony Stark's eyes widened, just as he was about to say something when he looked at the guy who was killed by Su-Che's bullet. But seeing Su-Che returning the weapon to Carl, he smiled at Tony Stark. "Is there any problem?" Facing Su-Che's question, Tony Stark didn't know what to say for a while. In his impression, even if someone commits a crime, they can't be punished privately, right? It has to be judged. Just as Su-Che raised his hand, he directly rewarded the old man with a bullet. For Tony Stark, it was a bit unacceptable, and many more. As if he had come to terms with it, he looked at Su-Che, and then at Carl and the others who were accustomed to it. Tony Stark realized that this is not a private punishment. After all, people are Aegis, and they should have the right to execute these people. "Let's go. It's very late. Because of your curiosity, you are clamoring to come over quickly, but I haven't eaten dinner yet." "Never mind. You'll have dinner tonight." After watching Tony say a word, Su-Che glanced casually at the empty place not far away, and then walked directly to the Kuan-style fighter. "Okay, don't think about it so much. Since you are now the advisor of S.H.I.E.L.D., Mr. Stark, you have to adapt to these things." Looking at Tony Stark while putting away the weapon, Carl smiled and said, "The boss is already very kind." So he left the other 4 guys to deal with it directly. You must know that when the boss was on a mission before, when he encountered such a noisy villain, the boss would not even stay behind. Don't use the common sense you are already familiar with to judge the behavior of S.H.I.E.L.D. There is an iron law in Aegis, that is, anyone who harms the world and the common people, the Aegis has the right to destroy them on the spot. Having said that, Carl looked at the corpse on the ground, and then looked at the other 4 old fellows whose hearts were ashes. Then he waved his hand and motioned the brothers in the action team to take these 4 people away, and then let them clean the scene. If you think he is pitiful, then think about these 6 ordinary people who died. You pity him? Who pity those 6 innocent people? So don't use kindness on this kind of person. I dare to conclude that if we hadn't discovered the Aegis earlier, I'm afraid more people would die and cause greater disasters. Watching Carl put away his equipment and prepare to board the Quinjet together, Tony Stark subconsciously took his arm and asked, "You're right, Carl, but are you sure if you don't participate, there will be more serious consequences?" "Definitely, this is common sense. You don't even know this." Looking at Tony Stark in surprise, Carl said directly, "As S.H.I.E.L.D. and our boss's advisor, you have permission to read some documents. After reading some documents, you will know what kind of disasters such people who are desperate for their so-called piety will cause. Our boss, Natasha Romanoff, and Barton met each other when they were on a mission. But then, you'd better go and see for yourself. Data on paper, more than words." Patting Tony Stark on the shoulder, Carl said softly, "So, if you read those documents, I'm afraid you will make the same choice as our boss." Watching Carl turn to leave after speaking, Tony Stark turned his head and glanced at the old man's body on the ground. He looked at the shriveled, broken corpse that was being put away. Then he nodded and quickly caught up with Su-che. Hey man, it's fine for me tonight, but I'd like to eat roast meat. What do you think of roast meat? As long as it's not a cheeseburger anyway. Oh man, the cheeseburger is pretty good. You can actually try it. Come on, don't give up on recommending your favorite to me. I don't like eating this kind of thing. Cut, I don't care about wages at all. These words came from the mouth of a billionaire, and they are not convincing at all. Depend on. After Su-che's people with Aegis evacuated, a few people slowly walked out from the side. The leader of the Aegis just now seems to have discovered us. Wong looked at Anthony Druid next to him and said, I know that the Aegis leader's ability is very strong, so it's normal to find us. After all, we didn't use secret techniques to hide, but although he doesn't know secret techniques, his mental power is the strongest among all the people I've ever seen. Even my mental power is not as good as his. Hearing Anthony Druid's words, Wong subconsciously glanced at it, and at this moment he had already disappeared into the night sky in the direction where the Kuan-style fighter jets left. So, he is also a good seedling who learns magic? That's right, but unfortunately, he is a person of Aegis, and it seems that his status is not low among Aegis. Anthony Druid nodded lightly, then looked at Si Zhou. Okay, let's not talk about that. Since the Aegis people have settled the matter, let's go back to the magic holy place. What should I do with the black box that was taken away? You must know that the black box can deceive and affect consciousness. It is a very dangerous thing. Before Wong could finish speaking, Anthony Druid interrupted with a smile. Do you see that the young man was affected? We are not good at dealing with Aegis. After the teacher returns from the alien dimension, the teacher will have a solution. Okay, I hope nothing else happens. Hearing that Anthony mentioned the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, Wong nodded in approval and said,
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.